All right. We're live. At least I think we're live. Usually Elon handles this end of things. He is not here this week. Thank you, Dave. Dave, I saw your most recent trade. Not to tip off to anyone in our division what we might be talking about, but I'm thinking about it. I just got sidetracked with the actual show. Dave, Mathieu, Michael, thanks for being here in the chat. Please feel free to chip in with any comments on sound going sideways. Your feedback is valuable. And everybody else who's joined us to watch the live show. Oh, I wanted to do a tweet, so I'm going to do that first. Anyone want to introduce themselves?
I'm Jade, 1/3 of Average Time on Ice, and a huge fan of Keeping Karlsson.
I was hoping to introduce Jade, but my name is Ben. I'm also on Average Time on Ice. I'm the cute one.
What were you gonna? How are you gonna introduce me? I want to hear it.
Matilda's mom.
Oh, yeah, Matilda's here too. That's my dog.
And Mark's traveled the longest distance to be here.
Yeah, all the way from Dublin, Ireland. It's midnight.
You don't stay.
10 past midnight.
Okay, so you're staying up late with us.
Excuse me if I have a Red Bull.
Elon would be proud. Someone needs to have one. And I think Elon is getting paid secret ad money on the side. So someone needs to keep that sponsorship deal up while he's away.
You can do the same with noodles. or whatever it is you're eating.
Chicken and rice tonight, but I wish it were noodles. Okay, yeah, I usually eat while Elon does the intro. It gives me a couple good minutes, but I am not going to waste anyone's time here. So let's get this show on the road. Here we go. I should probably not be chewing anything. Okay. Jade, can you mute yourself? Thanks. It's going to be great. You're going to give us some great content tonight. Okay. Yes! Welcome to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, owned by two guys who at one point owned Erik Karlsson in their keeper pools. My name is Brian Common. I am your host today. Missing, you might have noticed, is Elon Dabrowski, who is on a well-deserved vacation, enjoying all the wonderful fruits that vacation generally offers. Fruits and pizzas and beers, I'm sure. So he's not with us today, but we do have some wonderful guests here with us. We've got the Average Time on Ice crew, or at least 2/3. Maybe we'll have the full set by the end of the show. And we've got Marcas here, who's I'm going to introduce them all in a sec. But first, how about we just mention quickly that this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, like all of them, is presented by DauberHockey.com. Dauber Hockey is your source for all fantasy news. It's the place you want to go if you're wondering what line someone's playing on during a game. If someone's hot, if someone's cold, if you want to buy high. Oh, no, you don't want to buy high on anyone. If you want to buy low, sell high, all kinds of tools and daily ramblings over at DauberHockey.com. If you're not there, you're not even trying. So go check them out. Today's episode of the show is not just because Elon's not here, but we have a different plan. It's not going to be your usual Keeping Karlsson episode this time around. We're going to take a bit of a holiday pause to look back at the year that's been so far. Also take stock on what's happening in the Cupful. If you don't know what the Cupful is, it's the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. It is the most competitive, most intense, most fun, most amazing, I'm biased obviously, fantasy league in the world. There's multiple tiers. If you don't know what it is, if you've never heard of it before, which would be weird by now, keepingkarlsson.com/KKUPFL to see the full set of rules. And there's links to every division that you can go check out and say, oh, what's happening in the Cupful right now? But you won't need to do that because we have a very special guest here tonight. His name is Marcas, and he comes to us all the way from Ireland. And he has been dropping Cupful stats to all participants. It's been this huge perk of being in the cupful this year is getting like your performance analyzed and like seeing spreadsheets of how you compare to the other like Elon's gonna kill me. 220 competitors.
224.
100 or 200?
224.
Yeah, good. 224 competitors in the cupful. It's a huge multi-tiered league. There's like 14 or 15 different divisions. And Marcas does yeoman's work compiling how each and every team is doing, looking at trends and transactions. We try and reference this stuff regularly when we talk about percentage owned in the cupful. Anyway, Marcas, thank you for joining us and being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's a real privilege. I love the show, and I'm delighted to be able to contribute. I'm delighted to be here.
Man, we're so happy to have you. So Marcas is here. After we talk, he's also compiled some of our projection hits and misses from the Keeping Karlsson Almanac. So stuff that Elon and I missed on, some that we hit on. So we're going to start the show with that. And then we're going to get into some brief NHL news and notes. We're going to recap the biggest NHL headlines of the week. Not all of them. This is like supposed to be kind of a week off, but we're here giving you like a semi-bonus episode, hence the different format. And then after that, we are going to hit the cupful and go through all the trends. And I bet you're going to find some handy insights about the cupful that are going to help you in your league, whether you're participating or a commissioner or just whatever. Lots of food for thought when we get to that bit. To help us through all of it, I've already introduced Marcas. We have, I mentioned the average time on ice crew with us, or at least partially. Ben, how's it going?
Hot as ever over here in Alberta.
Great. And Jade, you here?
I'm here.
Fantastic. Okay. What's new? Give me some of that ATOI flair.
Yeah, well, for those of you who don't know, I had the honor, pleasure, privilege to actually meet Brian and Elon and some others for the first time the other day. So what's new since then? Not much. ATOI posted our year in review article today, so you can check that out on our blog, which is averagetimeonice.wordpress.com.
Right. And it's a fantastic blog. These people are funny and they know about hockey, and it's a rare combination. So how about you go check out that blog and their Twitter account? We'll repeat it all at the end of the show. For now, you're probably like, where's the content? Here comes the content. So as many of you know, we started this season with the first ever Keeping Karlsson 2018-19 audio almanac, which was a 30-hour smorgasbord where Elon and I went through every single fantasy relevant player on every single team in the NHL. So it was 31 chapters long, plus a smorgolies board chapter in there. And we gave projections for each of them. It was our first time projecting. And like, my opinion is that if you're going to do this, you better try and you hope that someone's going to be around to keep you honest, right? Because if you're just going to be projecting willy-nilly every year and no one's checking you on it, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over. And thankfully, that's where Marcas comes in. So Marcas, you have compiled some of our bigger hits and misses. I know this isn't the official halfway point of the season, but it kind of feels like it. It feels like a good time to get into this anyway. So Marcas, how did you, if you can just quickly describe like your methodology here, how did you find, you combed through all our projections and saw which ones we were closest on and which one we were furthest on at this point of the year?
Yeah, more or less. So yeah, it's not exactly the halfway point of the season. It is for some teams. Some teams have just hit the 41 game mark. So that's a nice round figure to look at. Yeah, what I did was I took your spreadsheet, yours and Elon's, and compared it against where players are at so far. It's all based on point paces, obviously, which was what your projections were based on. So, you know, if somebody's missed a couple of games, I'm not gonna punish the projection for that. I do have to say, obviously, we're going to go through 5 or 6 misses. I think we've got 3 for each of you, and then a couple as well for your combined. To be honest, most of them are not anything that you guys have done wrong. They're mainly players just absolutely stinking. So yeah, once we get started on them, I'll go into some more of the details. But overall, the almanac and the projection sheet that you gave was really, really valuable. What I do with them, I take 5 or 6 different projections from different people across the internet. and combine them all and kind of get an average of each one. And that's what I use as my draft kit each year. So yours was extremely valuable for that.
Okay, so yeah, so this could be a potentially very embarrassing exercise, but we hope that we're gonna learn something from it all. So let's take a look. Let's just to enter slowly here. Since he's not here, how about we begin by talking about who Elon has missed out on the most in his start of year projections. So, Marcas, you mentioned there were three big misses so far for Elon. Who were they?
So the number one miss for Elon was Nolan Patrick of the Philadelphia Flyers. Elon went very high on him, projected 55 points for him this season. Nolan Patrick is 20 years old. It's only his second season in the league, so it makes it a lot more difficult to project. You don't have a whole lot to go on. He promised a lot in his first season, 30 points in 73 games. This season, he's increased his ice time, but he's only pacing for 27 points when Elon projected 55. So that's a huge miss. That's nearly double.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Nolan Patrick. And I mean, you mentioned he had 30 points in 73 games last season. But let's remember, like, a lot of those came, like, so it's like, why would we expect this guy to break out? Well, he has the pedigree of being a top 2 draft pick. And he also just went on a crazy run when he finally did get good deployment. He seemed unstoppable. And I'm not going to lie, I also thought Nolan Patrick would be in pretty good shape. However, so far it's not working out for him. You mentioned, Marcas, that his ice time went up since last year, which is great. The trouble is that his most common line mates, well, I mean, he was playing with Voracek and Oscar Lindblom for a bunch, which is actually who he was producing with at some point towards the end of last year. But now, most recently, he's playing with Michael Raffl and Scott Loughton on like the third line in Philly. So I guess, I guess he could not earn his keep on the top line or like in the top 6. And of course, the top 6 in Philly is a little more crowded with the arrival of James Van Riemsdyk, which we attempted to account for, but I guess not so much. So it's been a really rough year. He's definitely someone I added earlier in the season and was like, oh yeah, I just need to wait. Like, he's going to pay off at some point. And like, I've dropped him in every league that I at one point added him in. And the unfortunate thing for him is that he's not even seeing like terrible luck or unsustainable scoring numbers. Like, this just seems to be who he is and what he's been doing. So it's a bummer. I still believe in him. Like, he had a great run. He had a 10-game run earlier this year where he had, I think, 9 points in those 10 games. But literally outside of that run, he has a total of 2 points in the other, like, 20, 25 games or so. So some consistency definitely needed from Nolan Patrick for him to have a better season. Elon might have just been off by a year, been a little early on that. Who are the others? Give me the 2 other guys that Elon missed on.
Yeah, so number 2 was Ryan Spooner, who's had a bit of a tumultuous season with a trade and a coaching change at Edmonton. Elon had him at 45 points and he's pacing for 12, which is, it's shocking on Spooner's part, really. The other guy was Tanner Pearson, who was also involved in the trade around the same time, mid-November. Again, Elon had him at 45 points. He is pacing at 19. And to be honest, he hasn't picked up a whole lot. He's picked up a little bit since joining the Penguins, but he's nowhere near 45-point pace.
It's funny because, like, you'd think that guys who you project for like a pretty pedestrian, barely half point per game pace, Spooner and Pearson both at 45 points, seems reasonable. And then all of a sudden it's not. It's not like they're not even close. They're not even on 20-point paces. Spooner's had an awful season. New York was not, like, he had 16 points in 20 games with them last year after being traded there from Boston. The start of his season did not go well. He was playing less than 13 minutes a night, got traded to Edmonton, playing less than 10 minutes a night over 17 games there. So just getting no deployment whatsoever. And actually, in the news today, the Edmonton Oilers made a couple depth trades where they traded depth players for worse depth players, or at least that's the early analysis on it. And rumor has it Like I just saw something reported as we were about to go live that they were actually trying to include Ryan Spooner in one of those deals, but could not get rid of him. So Eberle to Strome to Spooner to like failing to get rid. What a terrible chain of events. Yeah. I mean, we don't need to invoke that. We're Oilers fans feel badly enough, I'm sure. And Tanner Pearson, similar story. His deployment just crashed this year, even though he was with the same team in LA, right? I mean, he did get traded to Pittsburgh at some point, but for whatever reason, LA decided to not use him the same way they have in the past, where he'd been playing like 16 minutes a game for the last 2 years. In LA this year, in 17 games, he had just 1 assist and was averaging 13 and a half minutes per game, which is a huge cut in ice time. He lost 3 minutes of his ice. He also, I'm taking a look at his line mates here, was just shuffled all over the place during his brief time in LA. Like he was playing with like Matt Luff, Kempe, Toffoli, Carter, Trevor Lewis, and Kovalchuk even a little bit, and like really not sticking with any of them. He's played with Kempe and Toffoli a lot last year and a little bit of Dustin Brown. Saw no Dustin Brown this year. So anyway, Tanner Pearson, really rough year. And now that he's with Pittsburgh, his deployment has not really improved. So I remember when he was traded, it's like, maybe this is going to be a good thing for him because there's not enough depth for him to produce but in LA. But I guess there's not enough depth for him to be in a meaningful, or there's too much depth in Pittsburgh for him to be able to take on a meaningful role himself. Jade, Ben, any thoughts on what we've seen from Nolan Patrick, Ryan Spooner, and Tanner Pearson, all falling far short of like not unreasonable projections by Elon? He had them at 55, 45, and 45 respectively, and they're at 27, 12, and 19.
Not a ton to say. I think with someone like Nolan Patrick might be a little interesting in the second half, just because we sometimes see younger players, especially rookies or second-year guys, who maybe adjust to the league. Remember, Nolan Patrick was injured for a lot of last year. So I just think it's possible maybe if you're in a large enough league where the waiver wire isn't too deep, that you could stash a guy like Patrick and hope that he breaks on a nice second line for the Flyers in the new year.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's sort of what we saw last season. If you take a look at his game log from 17-18, it was a bit of a waiting game. And again, like he had a nice little run already this year. There was just nothing before it and nothing since. But last year, it was game 41 where Nolan Patrick finally turned it on. He picked up, I'm just doing the quick math here, he had 21 points in his last 33 games of the year. So, Marcas, like you said, we're right around game 41 now. Nolan Patrick's most recent game was game 33. So he's got a little ways to go. But maybe after game 40, everybody should rush to go pick up Nolan Patrick because he's about to go on another run. Okay, enough about Elon's misses. Marcas, how about you share the 3 guys that so far I have whiffed on the most according to our preseason almanac projections?
Okay, so let's get all the misery out of the way early so we can focus on the hits then.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, both of you missed out on. I just picked them for you because you missed out on them slightly more. So the first guy is William Nylander. He's only back a month or so after all the drama. My God, the radio coverage, TV coverage, Colin Minch's Twitter, he was all over it. The guy hadn't played a game, and then he signs his contract, comes back, and he's at a 15-point pace since he returned. His deployment obviously hasn't been great. He needs to get up on one of the top lines. But the 75-point pace that was projected for him seems a distant cry at this stage. The next guy is James Neal. Probably the biggest fall from, let's say, relative grace this season. Brian had James Neal pegged for 58 points to improve on 51-point pace from last season with Vegas. In 11-12, 13-14 with the Penguins, he was hitting 83, 85-point paces. He's now hurtling towards a pathetic 15-point season, 7 points in 38 games. He's only missed a single game this season and has been seeing a decent amount of ice time. I think he's averaging 15 and a half minutes. There's no excuses here. He's 31 years of age. He's not exactly old by NHL standards, but what a fall. And the third guy then, Jesse Puljujarvi, I won't go into him too much. The projection on this were for 56 points pace for pool party. Turns out the projections were way too high here. 5 points in 27 games. He's on course for a 15-point season. Third year in the league, and it would be his worst season to date if he were to continue that. Who knows what's going on in Edmonton? The lines seem to have changed so many times this season. It's impossible to say who's going to improve, who's going to, get sent down. What will happen?
I like what you said, Marcus, when you were introducing like how you decided who was hit, like who we hit on and who we missed. And you were like, you guys weren't wrong about any. You weren't wrong. Their teams are wrong about how they've deployed these guys. And like that's how I feel very strongly about this entire set of players. Like I don't know who they are expected to, or how much they're expected to be able to do. So let's start off with James Neal. So I had him for 58 points because I had him winning the spot on line 1 in Calgary, or at least being serviceable enough to not be 43 points off the pace I had him at. I had him at 58. You said he's at 15 right now. We're all waiting for something to happen with James Neal, and I think that something could be a buyout. Like I think that's honestly more likely than him scoring 20 goals again at the rate things are going. Maybe he gets traded with some salary retained, but it just does not seem like a fit in Calgary. That's a really regrettable contract. I still wonder, like, we detailed in the almanac, like I was very clear about the downward trajectory of James Neal's career. And then he had the great year in Vegas. I'm like, okay, as a secondary guy, he can still be serviceable. And then if he plays with Gaudreau and Monahan, which like I put, that's the hill I chose to die on in the almanac, or not to die on, but like to live briefly on and then to move off of quickly. Anyway, like I thought that would be enough to push him up to 58 points. Obviously, it never happened, and he has not even found a role as a secondary contributor in Calgary. So that's a mess, and I don't expect that one to fix itself. Puljujarvi, you mentioned, so I had him for 56 points, and he has a 15-point pace, and that's where you just go hashtag Oilers, right? Like that. Yeah. There's nothing more you can say about it. He did have a brief run this year playing with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Jujhar Khaira, and it's like that, like, or Nugent-Hopkins and Drake Caggiula also, and it's like, oh, like maybe that's going to be great. But when you're playing for like 4 games with each of those guys, RNH is a fantastic line mate, but it's just like there's no Draisaitl, no McDavid, so he's not getting any exposure to the guys who I think at this stage in his career, he probably could use some exposure to. And like, honestly, if he's not doing that, if he's not going to be able to be used in a top 6 role in the NHL, I feel like the AHL makes more sense for him. But a lot of things might make more sense than what the Oilers choose to do. So unfortunately for Puljujarvi, his deployment situation is not as rosy as I hoped it would have been going into the season. And then William Nylander, yeah, I had him in a 75-point pace. I felt like I just wanted to ignore the whole contract impasse, and that bit me here. Like I was just like, yeah, it's gonna be fine. Gonna take on the same role as last year, but nope, he missed like almost 3 full months of the year, and then re-entered the lineup in a poor place. Ben, is he someone you missed on as well? Like, what were you thinking for William Nylander coming into this season?
I was thinking in the 70s range. Part of that is that I really, when you look at the season long or the 82 game paces from Austin Matthews last year, he just looked like he was going to emerge into such a stud. And Nylander being attached to his hip is just such a primo spot. They work so well together. Nylander and that like Nikolai Ehlers type of player who can move the puck through the neutral zone and just kind of knife through there with his sudden speed. So I mean, I don't think that he's a different player anymore. I don't think that he suddenly doesn't have that ability, but you just have to wonder, because we play such a game of so much variance, fantasy hockey. You just have to wonder like when it clicks, and when it does, I think like you really want him to be on your squad. The question is it going to be this year, or do we have to wait until next year for that potential to come through? I think with this year, though, if you can get him for a player, if you're in a deeper league and there are players towards the bottom of your lineup, a player I'm thinking of like a Konechny or like a Yanni Gord. If you can turn one of those guys who are just a little bit better than what's available in free agency into a William Nylander, I think that that's like maybe a future, championship winning move when, like, if Nylander can turn into the player that he can be at the right time of year.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you guys have said about Nylander. And as anyone who's in
Matilda making a guest appearance in the show. Don't mind her. We all like her.
Oh man, she's like sleeping perfectly silently. This is just my problem. Okay.
She's all riled up about William Nylander. Oh, you're saying not to blame her. Okay, anyway, sorry.
I'm all riled up about William Nylander because I traded Michael Furland for him I don't know, early on in the season when Furland was just lighting it up, and it seemed like there was no way that was going to be sustainable. And I thought this was a brilliant sell high moment for myself. Furland has since been dropped in that league, and he had all the injuries, and he hasn't really come back to be quite as good. So I've calmed down about it a little bit, but it's been really frustrating having Nylander this whole time. And like you, Brian, I think I just kind of underestimated how long the contract pulled out was going to go, and B, like how hard it was going to be for him to jump back into the groove once he came back. If you're in a place where you're like definitely going to make playoffs in your league, though, I think it's a good move to make because, like Ben said, the upside is just so huge. And even, all the frustrations we've seen from him, it's been such a small sample size. Like if this were, October and we were 3 weeks into the season and he weren't performing and everyone were freaking out about him, I think we'd all be saying, you have to hold on to him. The upside's too high. Just be patient. It's harder to be patient now that it's December, but for him, it's still early on. So I'm still holding on to him. I may regret that in a month, but I feel like there's no other option, honestly.
Yes, and that's the trouble, right? We have a lot of questions, both in our patrons only group and on Twitter, about what should I do with William Nylander. And a lot of people are in a position where, like, if you do anything, you're selling low. Like whether you drop him or you trade him, you're not getting full value back. So my follow-up is usually like, well, where are you in the standings? Like, can you afford, like, you want to figure out how long you can afford to wait and like come up with a plan. Like if you can't wait anymore, if you're at the bottom of your league, like you might just need to cut ties depending on who else is out there in free agency, or sell for like less than his hopeful eventual value. If you have like some leeway in terms of like some standings, room to breathe, then maybe you can afford to wait a little longer. You can only imagine once he gets on his first like 2-game point streak, like everybody's going to be going nuts for him and his value will be up there. So like you can also just hope and make that your plan to just get that far with him. I will say, out of the 3 guys I missed on the most, according to your analysis, Marcus, between Nylander, James Neal, and Puljujarvi, Nylander is the only guy I see with the potential to actually really bounce back in a meaningful way. A lot of it is going to come, hopefully, with a bigger role on the team. Right now, he's playing with Kadri, and then the third guy has been Marleau or Connor Brown for most of the season. But I also see someone who's taken 20 shots, has yet to score. Like, give the guy a couple goals on that. I also see a guy with an on-ice shooting percentage at even strength that's under 4%. Like, this guy is, again, unlike Puljujarvi and James Neal, a little snake bitten, and it's exacerbating the situation that he's in. So that's my message, to not totally give up hope on William Nylander. And Jade, I'm happy for you that Michael Furland is now playing with Warren Fogle and somebody named Clark Bishop on Carolina's whatever line. So he lost his great deployment, and part of that is because of the rise of Andrei Svechnikov up the depth chart. So you don't have to feel so bad. It's always the best, like when you make a trade that bites you in the butt right away. But like, I just love to watch the players I trade away like fall apart. It feels good. I guess, yeah. Should I feel bad about that?
I've taken like real schadenfreude pleasure in just seeing Furland not be very good anymore, which is, yeah, I feel bad about that. But sorry, Michael, it's for the best for everybody.
Okay, Marcus. So also in the almanac, right? So I gave my projection, Elon gave his, and then we averaged out our projections to have a combined number. So you found the guys that Elon and I, with our combined brain power, missed the most on.
Yeah, again, these guys are people who are generally just underperforming against their own standards and against the standards that you set for them. So the first guy, St. Louis Blues, the D-man, Colton Parayko. He entered the league. He had 33, 35, 35 point pace seasons. Consensus was that he would be winding it up a little bit and hitting 40 points this season, but unfortunately he's on a decline. He's pacing for 23 points coming up to the halfway point of the season, so that was a bit of a miss. Second guy, Milan Lucic of the Edmonton Oilers. His best days are definitely firmly behind him. A little bit of a James Neal syndrome here. Obviously won the Cup in 2011 with the Bruins, was a huge part of that team, but he's on a steady decline. He's 8 points in 38 games. He's pacing for 17 points, and the projection here was 45 points, so maybe a little bit of a nostalgic projection. He's definitely pretty much in the same situation as James Neal. Third guy was Derek Stepan of the Arizona Coyotes. Should be at the prime of his career now, 28 years of age. In his position, you would expect that to be when he's hitting his best. He's on track for his worst points total of his career. He has 17 points in 38 games, heading for a 37-point pace. He needs a massive upturn in fortunes to reach the 60-point projection that you guys tagged him with in October in the Almanac. And then the last guy was Tyler Toffoli of the LA Kings. He's had 4 seasons consecutively in the 40 to 50 point range. He was looking to continue that trend, especially with the arrival of Ilya Kovalchuk at the Staples Center. 50 points was a fairly natural, reasonable projection there. But the downturn in projection that he's seen has him at just a 29-point pace, which will be the worst of his career. His shooting percentage, you might pick up on that, Elon, can probably be blamed a little bit. He's at 5.4% this season, the lowest of his career by quite a distance. So if that picks up and regresses to the mean, you would hope that he might pick that up in the second half of the season.
Yeah, he's only played a couple games since last show when Elon drew our attention to the insane shot totals that he'd been putting up. It must have been, anyway, in his last 3 games, he's continued that. He's got 12 shots in his last 3 games, including a 7-shot effort. Still, he's scored in that 7-shot effort, which is great, but he probably deserves better. Also, an interesting little piece for anyone who sees Tyler Toffoli in their free agency pool in a deep enough league. He's getting some power play time the last few games. He's getting a nice share of his team's power play time, and he really hadn't seen that really for more than 1 or 2 games at a time at all this season, and he generally hasn't either. So keep an eye on that. He's now at 3 games in a row where he's seen at least half the Kings' power play time on ice available to forwards. So keep that in mind for Tyler Toffoli if you're looking for like a speculative ad in your league. Then any of those names catch your ear? So I'll repeat them. We have Parayko, who's essentially just above half the 40-point pace we projected. Lucic, who's at 17 points on a 45-point projected pace. Stepan, 37-point pace on a 60-point projection. And Toffoli, we just talked about, who's 20 points shy of his 50-point projection.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with Stepan just because on the time-sensitive tip, you might want to stream him in tonight, given that he's currently power play 1 and line 1 with Clayton Keller. I've noticed a lot of people picking up on Richard Panik in the same spot, but just given that there's only 1 game tonight, if you're in a close matchup, try and stream in Panik or Stepan just because they're plush deployment. Stepan's always been such a consistent 60-point player. I think he's still that guy if he's getting the deployment. It's just probably not going to pan out over a full season the way that he did on, say, the Rangers, where they never really had, a number 1 center. And I mean, I guess the Coyotes don't either, but when you're with Keller, that's really the only chance you have of being a consistent producer. The other guys, I just kind of want to say, pour one out for Colton Parayko and Milan Lucic for very different reasons, for sure. I mean, Lucic is currently on pace for 2 goals over the full season, which would put the Oilers on the hook for $3 million a goal on his contract. So, I mean, he's done. Colton Parayko, though, it's just kind of, I mean, this is the bell toll. We got to give it up. He's not going to be, the guy that we thought he might be when he came into the league. And it's been said a couple times on this podcast, especially I remember when Cam was on a few weeks ago. It's just he's not the guy that they're looking for to run their first power play. And I still think he'll be very consistent of a player. Like, he'll be a depth defenseman in fantasy for a long time. His peripherals give him a really solid floor, especially in a categories league. But, you know, just kind of pour one out for that potential we thought he might have when he came in the league.
Yeah, when the Blues continue to play Vince Dunn on the power play. And to his credit, Vince Dunn, like, is not doing terribly in the role, right? Like, and Alex Pietrangelo, we should mention, came back to the lineup this weekend and did not see time on the top power play. So looks like 22-year-old Vince Dunn could hold on to that spot. So far, Dunn has 5 power play points in 34 games, which, like, isn't great for someone seeing as much power play time as he is. But I guess, like you said, Ben, we're looking at someone that the Blues seem to believe in more than Colton Parayko, who we liked when he came into the league as like a big booming shot taker. And his shot rates have actually not improved since coming into the league. This is actually his weakest season in terms of shots on goal and shot attempts. I think he also is seeing like he probably could have a few more points because of a low IPP. But on the whole, he's never, or at least it doesn't seem like that deployment that we wished he would get is really in reach. And then Lucic, yeah, there's not much more to say there. Derek Stepan, like, I have to say, like, I'm looking for ways to understand what happened, because like his deployment hasn't been as awesome as we thought it would. Like, he was not, like, Alex Galchenyuk took over briefly, at least, as the team's #1 center, which we didn't see coming. But like, his numbers all look the same and generally look sustainable. Like, there's no big markers of unsustainability, but Marcas, as you said, he's on a 36-point pace from a pretty decent spot in the lineup. So it's kind of a head scratcher to me. Like, I've had him on a couple rosters of mine this season and dropped him. Of course, like, he got 2 goals in the next game and then went quiet again. So whatever, like, I make peace with that. But it's been a weird season. Like, I agree with you, Ben, that I still think Derek Stepan has the potential to be a 60-point player. I'm just not sure exactly what the reason is that he is not even approaching that so far this year. Like, I see a couple small explanations, but like nothing to really address the 25-point gap between 60 points and his currently projected, his current pace, which is just above 35 points on the year. Okay, so that's a summary of our big misses from the Almanac that we released pre-season. Just to be clear, like, we didn't release it a week ago and we're already this far off. But you know, one place that you're not going to miss is with our friends and sponsors over at SeatGeek. They're a hit because, you know, getting tickets online can be far too complicated. Hundreds of sites. You can't even rely on all of them. Like, it's hard to know who you can trust. And that's why SeatGeek is the way to go. Why? Because they pull millions of tickets into one place so you can easily find the seats you want for a price you're willing to pay. There's nothing quite like being there in person, and SeatGeek is going to get you closer to the action for great value. And SeatGeek is actually, like, it's designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. It searches multiple ticket sites, grades every ticket based on value, so you can immediately figure out which are the best seats that fit your budget. Also, SeatGeek has every purchase made on it fully guaranteed, so you don't have to worry about anything going sideways. You can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. I've used it to buy tickets. Whenever I think of buying tickets, it's my first place to go. I just pop open the app, type in where I want to go, and then it shows me the best deals available. If you're thinking of doing the same, all you need to do is download the SeatGeek app, and we'll give you a little bonus for trying it out. You get $10 off your very first SeatGeek purchase as a Keeping Karlsson listener. That's right, $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code KEEPING today. That's promo code KEEPING for $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Anyone want to join me with the slogan? It's risky, in case nobody knows it.
Be a geek, buy a seat.
Anyone else?
Be a geek, buy a seat.
I'm glad you're quoting Elon's made-up slogan for SeatGeek, but the one we have is SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets. Oh, of course. Anyway, go check them out. SeatGeek. Great service.
I feel like SeatGeek should be hiring Elon to work in their marketing department since that's the slogan we all went with.
Yeah, maybe Elon has a copywriting future here. Good for him. Okay, so SeatGeek's a hit. Who else are hits? Who are the players? Like, enough of this sadness, Marcus. You've been just railing against us and telling us how terrible we've been with all our big misses and how it's all our fault. So can you please restore our listeners' faith in us by going over some of the hits we've had? How about we start again with Elon? Maybe you can mention each player one at a time, and then we'll open it up to the crew to see if we want to say anything, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, no problem. Most people like to get the bad news before they get the good news, so let's move on to the good news. Player number one, Marcus Johansson of the New Jersey Devils. He's recently joined the IR, unfortunately. But before that, after missing the last few games, he played 31 games, had 15 points, and that was good for a 39.7 pace. So with Elon having projected him at 40 for this season, Brian, you went a little bit higher at 45. Remains to see how that one's going to play out, but Elon is pretty much spot on with that one. So,
congratulations, Elon, for having the most boring hit possible. You nailed Marcus Johansson's projection. Like, you ask people what team Marcus Johansson plays for these, or even if he's in the NHL, I bet you don't even know. But Elon knows, and Elon also knows exactly how many points Marcus Johansson is going to get at 40-point pace, exact same pace he was on last year. Unfortunately, these are the two lowest paces of his career since his rookie season. But it looks like Elon has a sense of who Marcus Johansson is. Who else did Elon nail? Give us anyone exciting that he really figured out?
How about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins? Is he excited?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so with everything that's gone on with the Oilers this year, coach changes, line changes, players dropping, players coming in, trades, the whole lot. It's a testament to Elon that he managed to project this one correctly. Brian, you held back a little bit on him, projecting him at 60 points. Elon was a lot bolder, going with 70 points. 34 points in 38 games this season. So Nuge is pacing for a 73-point season. So Elon was only 3 points off with that one.
Yeah, so that was a big call from Elon, based mostly on the belief that Nugent Hopkins was going to be playing with Connor McDavid all year long. I backed off, thinking that maybe Nugent Hopkins wouldn't play with McDavid all year long. And you look at what Nugent Hopkins did in his first 23 games, picked up 22 points, many of those alongside, or if not all of them, alongside Connor McDavid. So good for him. However, since then, he's cooled off a little bit. I wonder if he's closer to my... I know we can't divide paces. No, he's still got 12 points in 15 games since. So that's still a lovely 66-point pace, which is right in between where Elon and I had him. How convenient. Yeah. Like Edmonton's a weird place to be. Nugent Hopkins has been on that line more than he's been off it. But I guess the big question is... what the heck are they ever doing over in Edmonton? Jade, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I have to give Elon a shout out on RNH because when I don't know, from all of his preseason projections, that was like the one that really stuck with me, got me going. I definitely drafted him thinking he was going to be a 70-point player based on Elon's enthusiasm. And I've been really, really happy with him. I just checked right now. He's like the 60th ranked player for my league settings that I have him in. There is always the question of what Edmonton's doing and the line dependence, but I think I don't have the stats right in front of me, but I think he was consistently doing well even when he was off that line. So I think he's shown that despite being on whatever Edmonton is, and whether or not he's playing with Connor McDavid, he can still be really useful. I almost tried to trade him a couple of times. I think I sent out some offers like when there was that, there was a big gloomy cloud hanging over his head for some reason. I'm not really sure why that was, but I almost did a panic trade. I'm really glad I didn't. So yeah, big RNH fan. Yeah, hope he sticks with Connor McDavid. I think obviously like Nylander or like any of these other players that we talk about, like if he has that spot, then the sky's the limit. So I think he's worth holding for that alone.
Yeah, RNH is one of those weird guys, like, who, like, I've gone on and on about, like, how he's not line dependent. Like, you know, like if you took Kyle Palmieri, Elon and I actually had like a big talk about this over the last week. Like, I when Taylor Hall got injured, I got very concerned for Palmieri. And I was like, "Oh, Palmieri's good. It just means more opportunity for him." Nugent Hopkins is not line dependent, but like, if he's not on the scoring line, they're counting on him to do like significant other heavy lifting. So it's really hard to it's hard to talk about him and just to really be clear that like, he's an amazing player and he can do what he's asked to do. It's just he's not always asked to produce. Ben, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I agree with you both that he's a great player. I think the thing is that his perceived value while he's up with McDavid is like really, really high. And a lot of that is because of the torrid start. I do think that there's lots of reasons to question whether or not he sticks on that line long term. And despite his success on the second line without McDavid earlier this season, we do have lots more data that suggests he isn't a 70-plus point player when he's not on that top line. So I'm not saying that I'd sell him for a 70-point player, but if you could turn him into a surefire, like non-line dependent 75 or 80-point player, that's something that I would be looking for right now as a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins owner.
So yeah, me too. But I don't really see that happening.
So I can tell you, as a dual RNH owners, like Elon and I both owned him. We both traded him in deals that netted us Raquel, and then he's been injured. Like, that was our move to cash in on RNH and not worry about what he's being asked to do in Edmonton. And then, of course, Raquel got injured. So that's been a bummer, but hopefully it'll still pay off. You look at Nugent Hopkins' line mates without McDavid. And he's been without McDavid for most of the last like 15 games or so. It looks like their last game where they primarily, like, they played together like 3 games ago, but until that, they had been mostly apart since the 15-game mark of the year. And Nugent Hopkins has been with guys like he's been playing with Puljujarvi and Jujhar Khaira. He's been playing with Drake Caggiula. They're like, hey, Nugent Hopkins, you can carry a line. Carry these chumps and see how far you can go. But thankfully for Nugent Hopkins, he's still been able, even in those times, to produce in large part because of his power play role, right? He's already up to 14 power play points on the season, which is a lovely thing. It's actually his highest power play point total since 2013-14. And he's got it because he's seeing 72% share of his team's power play time, when in the last 3 years, he'd seen 43%, 38%, 51%. So never a top power play guy in Edmonton the last few years until finally now. And it's so nice that he's making the most of it, even when he's separated from McDavid at even strength. Okay, so a couple Elon hits: Marcus Johansson, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Marcus, who's the third biggest hit for Elon?
So the third guy is a Blackhawk, Chicago Blackhawk, playing in the Winter Classic tomorrow. Alex DeBrincat, left wing, right wing eligibility, so dual eligibility there. He's another player that Elon, there weren't too many. I think, Brian, you were usually, you took the higher road. Elon projected 65 points, which was 10 more than your projection of 55. With half a season gone, 33 points in the bag for DeBrincat. He's pacing for a 66-point season in a struggling Chicago team. He's now arguably their second most valuable fantasy skater, behind Patrick Kane, probably roughly on a par with Jonathan Taves, but definitely on an upward trajectory. He's been very consistent. His first quarter and his second quarter were pretty much equal. 16 points in the first quarter, 17 in the second. His power play time has increased from 2 minutes to 3 minutes. He has 9 power play points. His time on ice is up from last season, and the sky seems to be the limit for this guy. He's only going to get better and better, I think.
It's been a great year for anybody projecting growth for Alex DeBrincat. Yeah, his pace last year was 53 points, so I guess that was kind of rude to only imagine he'd pace for 2 more in his sophomore season, thinking that maybe he saw a little some favor last year, but that was not the case. He is proving to be the real deal. He's seeing 3 more minutes of ice time per game on average, holding down a near 16% shooting percentage over the course of his first 300 NHL shots, which is exciting. Makes me wonder if he could be one of those high percentage converters or higher percentage converters. And honestly, he looks that way if you've watched him play. Has a power play role already, 9 power play points on the season. What a great guy. He did have a dry run, though, Ben, at some point. Were you ever concerned that the DeBrincat bubble was going to burst?
I wrote about DeBrincat on the Average Time on Ice blog, and basically what I came down to when I looked at the overproduction of his first 15 or so games and then the severe cold streak he went through over, I think it was a stretch of 11 or 12 games in the middle of the season.
Yeah, he had 1 goal and 1 assist over 11 games spanning from end of October to like late November.
And so I think like he's a guy who, moving forward, like 65 points is a really reasonable projection. But I also think I think he's a lot closer to a Patrick Kane than someone like Jonathan Toews is as far as fantasy production goes at this point. And I think really what's just holding him back right now is the uncertainty within the Blackhawks organization. You have Colleton in there, and there's not a lot of stability to DeBrincat's line mates. And when there is, he's playing with Dylan Strome, who may be a bit of a finisher, but isn't quite as adept at developing the play. Or, I mean, his foot speed gets derided a lot, but he just isn't the sort of guy who can set DeBrincat up to succeed as much as you would want. Not quite the same when he's on a line with Patrick Kane, and when he has been, he's produced at a really high level. So I think that he's a guy who, moving forward, you can look at as trending up towards 70 and 75 just based on the quality and talent level that he has.
Are you calling that for this season? Like, do you think DeBrincat can hold down a 70, 75 point pace the rest of this year? Or are you looking into the future?
Yeah, I just think like he has that potential. I'm not saying that I'm not bold enough to say that he'll go above the 65 point pace, but I mean, 3 weeks ago I sounded pretty bold saying that he would still be good for 65. So I'm holding course here with Elon, me and my boy Elon with our 65 point Alex DeBrincat predictions. All
right, enough about Elon. He's probably listening to this getting so excited about all the times he was right, and he is right a lot. He's a great guy to have on the show as a co-host and offering fantasy advice. But you know who else is a good guy to offer fantasy advice? No, I can't do that. I can't follow through on tooting my own horn. So, Marcus, can you let us know who my 3 best hits from the Almanac so far have been? Do any of them rival Marcus Johansson in boringness?
Probably the first guy, yeah. Arturi Lehkonen of the Montreal Canadiens.
Very boring.
So, yeah, 23-year-old Finn came into this season with expectations from yourself for 42 points against Elon's 35. He's 21 points in the bag after 39 games, hasn't missed a game. He's full steam ahead to break the 40-point barrier for the first time, and he's on course for 44 points. So that was your first hit. Okay. I don't know if there's much to be said about him.
Yeah, I mean, not the most exciting guy to be discussing, so we won't spend too long. I guess, there's I don't see a whole lot to say here. I'm actually surprised Elon went so much lower than I did. I thought it was going to be I don't know, not that much lower. Some people, I guess last season, 17-18 was the year that everyone was hoping for a Lehkonen breakout. Lately, Lehkonen's been playing with Kotkaniemi and Andrew Shaw. Before that, he's playing with Paul Byron and Kotkaniemi. So, not in a great deployment. Anyway, this is boring. Why am I talking about Arturi Lehkonen? Next hit, Marcus.
Next hit is a $66 million player, so a little bit more exciting, I suppose. Captain of the Arizona Coyotes, OEL, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Been around the league for a good while now, since 2010. He's one of the most consistent D-men around. Not the most exciting D-men, but consistent. He's pacing for 40-plus points every year since 2013. Had a standout 55 points in 75 games in 15-16. Brian, you expected more of the same. You projected a fair 45 points, I suppose. With the captain on his jersey and $66 million in the bank, he's headed for 45.3 points this season based on his pace so far. So spot on.
All right. I love being Oliver Ekman-Larsson is one of my favorite players to be right about, and I'll explain why in a moment. First, Ben or Jade, either of you want to pipe in here and add to Marcus's comments on OEL's season so far?
First of all, shouts out to Sean Couturier. Did we talk about Sean Couturier yet?
No, that's the
Uh,
mystery third hit that I had. So spoiler alert, but okay.
Spoiler alert. Shouts out Sean Couturier for repping my home province of New Brunswick.
You're doing a great
That's what I
job
have to
of
say about him.
You're doing a good job of playing Brian in the Elon Brian dynamic. Like
Nice. I'm glad.
Not knowing which
hashtag
player
Team
was
Brian.
Yeah, not knowing which player was most recently discussed and just guessing when you come in on the mic. Okay, no, we were talking about OEL.
Yes, I do have takes on OEL, but mainly it's just that Arizona seems like so much worse than we expected preseason. And they've shown like one thing that they're really prone to do is just going cold and not scoring for bunches at a time. So while I do think like OEL has that upside, it has a lot to do with just the variance of special teams. And if Arizona can figure out their power play stuff, he can be a 50-plus point player. It's just that right now I think they're kind of a mess. And that's the same reason that a player like Derek Stepan just isn't hitting at the same level that you can normally count on him to hit.
Ben, I'm so glad you just teed that right up for me, because you, like I said, OEL is my favorite guys to be right on. And then you went ahead and dropped the still could be a 55, 60 point player. But this has been
I said 50-55.
Oh, okay. I thought you said 75-80, which was that's crazy. What are you thinking? What I've been telling, no, sorry. I don't mean to misrepresent your take, but what I am saying, and I really appreciate, I know you just lobbed me the softball and segue, so thank you. But Oliver Ekman-Larsson is not who we thought he was. I don't think he ever, he had those amazing seasons, right? He had a 60-point pace in 2015-16. You want to know his point pace is the rest of his career? 2 seasons before that, 44-point pace, 45-point pace. 2 seasons since then, 40-point pace, 42-point pace, and this season on a 44-point pace. We know who this guy is, and I know everybody expects Arizona to take that step forward and for him to be a big part of it and getting in on it. Everyone just got super pumped about his 60-point year, but it was not sustainable. And I also know last year there were questions about his health that might have hampered him and kept him down to just a 42-point pace. But even still, I remember getting, after a 60-point season, I was on the fantasy hockey subreddit, and I got into a pretty lengthy argument with someone about it who really believed in him. And it really forced me to take a strong position on him, which is that essentially he's a 45-point guy, maybe 50 points. And that's what he's panning out. Not to pat myself on the back too hard here. It's really awkward. I wish somebody else was here to help congratulate me on these hits.
No, I think you're right about OEL. I'm not trying to misrepresent him as or I'm not trying to disagree with your take on what kind of player he is, but just to say that if a team like Arizona ever figured out their power play, he is the #1 guy on that unit. You can see a season where Clayton Keller puts up 90 points, they score, he scores 30 power play points. OEL is going to get in on those power play points to a large degree. You've seen variance from a lot of defensemen over the last couple of years. They have high years, they have low years. I just think in his high years, you can expect a better total than 45. Not because I think OEL is a better player than what he's been the last 2 years, but just that the team as in general can produce at a higher level at some point. I mean, obviously not just because we've seen who Arizona are. They have disproved the idea that tanking teams need to take step forwards as they go. But I just think, there's reasons to think that he can hit over 50 points in a season.
Jade, did you had some Coyotes, some additional Coyotes items you wanted to mention?
Yeah. I mean, the Coyotes have been extremely frustrating. One person who's been really difficult is Clayton Keller, because we've seen him do so well, and then we also see games where he does absolutely nothing at all, which brings me to my very personal dilemma of being down by 10 points in my Cupful matchup with only my Clayton Keller versus my opponent's nobody. So if Clayton Keller gets a hat trick tonight, I have tweeted out the opportunity to retweet my tweet, and I will do any dare that the people dare me, because I think that's what's missing from Clayton Keller's game, an opportunity for me to embarrass myself in front of our millions of followers.
Okay, so if you are listening to this now and you know that Clayton Keller got a hat trick, this is your chance.
No, you got to do it like before it happens. Like if you
Oh.
believe in Keller, you better go
Oh.
retweet it now.
Okay, you've got to call your shot now.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
unfortunately, like, yeah, no, it's been an awful season for Keller. It hasn't been. Alex in the chat was saying, like, people don't forecast Ekman Larson to be better; they forecast Arizona to be better, and for him to be a part of that. And like, I agree with that, which is why I still think he's like 45, 50 points though. Like, I don't know, and like his shot rates have not been up with his like the career, like the high watermarks he was setting earlier in his career. One unfortunate thing about Arizona's season this far is like their expected goals differential is below 0 right now, and it has been for most of the season. So is their shot attempt differential. So like they're just not playing as like we all know that like Arizona's a bit of a work in progress here. And like you can see they shipped out Brendan Perlini and Dylan Strome. Like you can see they're figuring out, we need to make some adjustments here. But they're not yet finding their footing. I thought that last year was enough time for new coach Rick Tocchet to like start figuring out how to fix things, and that this would be a better year for Arizona than it has been. It hasn't been. And you can't just say it's just because Antti Ranta is out, because like the team in front of him is not doing so well. Like they're still like, I'm quoting numbers that are more about team play rather than like and less affected by goalie play. So yeah, Arizona's got some heavy lifting to do to finally figure out exactly how to make their variety of pieces work. And then Marcas, my last hit for the moment.
Yeah, I think you can guess this one. It was already mentioned. Sean Couturier of the Philadelphia Flyers. This is a really interesting one because the wisdom of the crowds or the hive mind comes into play here. You projected 66 points in your specific projection, and when you went away from the 5-point intervals, Elon projected 65, and he's currently on pace for 65.6. So you're winning that by 0.1 of a point. So it's the hive mind at its finest.
All right. Yeah, I'm feeling good about that. He was on a 76-point season in 2017-18. And so far, like, yeah, why is he not on the same point pace? I think it's just because his on-ice shooting percentage regressed for the most part, as would be expected. So I'm feeling good about that. Anyone else? Ben, did you have a comment that you were ready to make when you you blew my call or whatever? Blew my spot.
Out of the bag.
I don't think I blew anyone's call, but shouts out Sean Couturier, New Brunswick lover, I guess we can say, for taking over the Bathurst Titans.
Oh, the Acadie Bathurst Titan.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he purchased that team when they were going through some financial struggles.
Oh, what a guy. Can we just give him 5 points for that? Or like have a fantasy hockey category for teams saved from bankruptcy, professional sports, and Couturier's got you covered there. Okay. Marcas, let's roll through, like, we're doing great here. Let's go through the hits that Elon and I got the most on our averaged out scores. I actually feel pretty good about these 4 guys. So maybe you can just name them all, and we'll sort of wrap them up quick, and then we'll get on to some NHL news and notes.
Yeah, cool. So number 1, I mean, if you're going to project somebody correctly, you might as well project the biggest superstar in the league. So Connor McDavid, you had him at 125-point pace. I think I recall correctly in the almanac you said that this guy could go as high as he wants. He's on pace for 124.1, so no big deal, but you got that one pretty much spot on between you. Second guy, William Karlsson, the Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, he was absolutely incredible last year. The numbers weren't sustainable, as was pointed out quite a few times. So projecting for him this season was probably a little bit difficult. You agreed on 60 points, and with exactly half a season gone in Vegas, he's pacing for just that. He has 15 goals, 15 assists in 41 games, so he's perfectly paced for 60 points. So again, spot on. And the last 2 guys, Steven Stamkos, he's on a 90.4 point pace. You projected 90, solid, pretty much like OEL. You know what you're going to get out of Stamkos. He has been a little bit hot and cold this year. I have him in my cupful team. but he overall is very, very consistent. And the last guy then I just threw in for giggles, Brent Seabrook, 30-point pace, 30 points projected, and that's that.
That's that. I like that list because I feel like they can all be summed up in like one brief comment. So Connor McDavid, he's as good as we thought he was. He is who we thought he was. William Karlsson, he's not who many thought he was. He's still good, but he's not the guy, the 40-goal scorer of yesteryear. Literally yesteryear. Sometimes you say that going further back. Steven Stamkos does not suck. He's still a really good player. Of course, it helps that he's got an amazing surrounding cast. It also helps that he has a 19.5% shooting percentage this year, which is actually he is not crazy for him. Like he's generally around 15% over the course of his career. But maybe, just maybe, he's a sell high. So like we called a 90-point pace, but I'm wondering if, and I'm saying like, yeah, he's still really good, but I'm not sure he deserves all 90 of these points. His ice time is actually also down at 17 minutes and 46 seconds, which is the lowest of his career since his rookie season. So just be mindful of that. Like this could be a good time while Steven Stamkos is hot and Tampa's rolling. Maybe you can get a really nice return for Steven Stamkos there. I said it. And finally, Brent Seabrook. Yeah, that's the boring hit. That's the boring combined hit. He's over. Brent Seabrook is done. Not much to say there. Lewis, hey, I'm going to introduce Lewis is part 3 or part 1 or 2. I'm not going to order the average time on ice crew, but Lewis, who you might have heard do the night before hockey way back at the start of this season, read a great poem for all of us that he wrote. He's here. Hi, Lewis.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
So good to have you. And Lewis, you're only on the show because you said that you had a bonus Brian hit to mention. And anybody who says that is welcome to join at any moment. What's this bonus hit?
Well, I hope that would be my key in the door. I feel like you're not getting enough credit for the hottest take that you had with all of the various almanacs, not almanacs, but all the various guides that were out there, which is Jaro Halak.
Yeah.
And his splitting time with the Bruins goal and maybe threatening the job for Tuukka Rask.
Yeah, so I'm feeling really great about that. And I hope it's helped a lot of people who listen to the Almanac. Halak has started, he had started 4 of the last 5 games for Boston. Rask started the most recent one. It was an overtime win. He played well, so maybe he'll earn another. But Tuukka Rask has not started more than 2 games in a row all season long. Halak has started more than 2 games in a row on 2 occasions. He had runs of 3 consecutive starts. And he is definitely the goalie who seems to be, I mean, I made the call, was it last week, where I said, like, I'm taking my preseason take a step further, which is that Jaro Halak is the game 1 starter for Boston. So if anyone drafting a playoff pool, keep that in mind. That'll come in handy.
That was a tough episode to listen for me because I believed in you very much at the start of the season. I got Halak for just a few bucks off of free agency the night before the season started in Sweden. And I lost the faith. I dropped him like 2 weeks ago when Rask started to pick it up, and I'm regretting it now.
And now he's like, he obviously was snapped up pretty quickly. The irony is that I don't own Halak. Like, I own Halak in one of my leagues, but that's it. You would think I would have bought in a lot. Oh no, I think I own him in 2. Elon will kill me. It's our joint league that I can't remember which players we actually own together. Okay, so that concludes the hits and misses. So how about this? I'm going to let's move into some brief NHL. Oh, actually, okay. If everyone could just hang with me here. Marcas, we have some like group hits and misses. Like you looked at players who are most outperforming their cupful draft rank, right? Would that be a fair way to explain these like overperforming breakout players?
Yeah, that was more or less the way I measured it. There's only 5 players here with a couple of honorable mentions then after that, so I'll get stuck into those.
Okay, so how did you, before you even get into them, how did you like pull this list?
Well, I compared the average draft pick or the average draft percentage in the cupful divisions against where they are ranked in the Yahoo League as it stands. So, for example, if somebody wasn't drafted in any of the cupful divisions and is now held in 100% of the leagues, I would class that as an overperformance. Or if somebody was drafted with an average draft pick of 200 and is now ranked 25, I would class that as a pretty big hit.
Okay. So these are guys that people did not draft or drafted late, but probably if we redid the draft today, would be drafted a lot higher. So how about give us the first two.
Okay, the first two guys who have been mentioned on the show numerous times, so they won't be new to anybody. The first one is Timo Meier of the San Jose Sharks. You guys were big on him early in the season and preseason. He was drafted in every cupful division, probably on the back of the podcast. His average draft pick was 175.6, so late enough. He's currently ranked 30th overall, and he's third amongst dual eligible left wing, right wing skaters. So he's really overperforming, even based on your high projections of him.
Okay, yeah. So, and when you say overperforming, you don't mean like just performing above where a lot of people drafted him, right? Like, I still have a lot of faith that he's been amazing. Timo Meier breakout year. Elon expressed some skepticism earlier in the season that like he's not going to last in the top 6 for long. And sure enough, he has managed to stay there all year, which has been a big factor in him playing at a 75-point pace right now. All right, next up.
Yeah, put it this way. If we were to be redrafting the league today, I don't think he'd be 175th in the draft pick. Same with the next guy, Thomas Chabot of the Ottawa Senators, drafted in 100% of cupful divisions. Average draft pick 190.7. He's currently ranked 24th. And he's the second highest D-man in fantasy in the cupful format, just behind Morgan Riley. So a huge season from Chabot so far. I think he's on a point a game pace.
Yeah. So, and we talked about him last week. I suggested like he's slowed down a little bit lately. Oh, well, he's been slowed down. We'll get to that in our NHL news and notes. Unfortunately, it looks like he might. Has it been confirmed that it's a concussion? He's injured. So I'll look into that by the time we get into our NHL news and notes segment. But if he were still playing, we still would have expected him to fall off a little bit more from his pace. But yeah, what a great late grab. Someone who's just essentially stepped into that like guy who's producing from the blue line in Ottawa without much help, like a couple elite players helping him, but that's it. Yeah,
he's replacing that guy that left and went to a different team.
Yeah, what's his name again?
I can't remember.
He didn't leave. He was traded.
Sorry.
He would never leave me, Marcas.
The next guy, Neil Pionk, D-man from the New York Rangers, was not drafted in a single cupful division. Sorry, I have to specify, this is not including the top division, which used an auction draft. I only went with the other 15. So he wasn't drafted in any of the other 15 divisions. He's currently ranked 148th and is 100% owned in cupful. So although nobody drafted him, everyone now owns him.
So I'm gonna put a question out there to Ben and Jade and Lewis, and somebody can just unmute themselves and let me know what they think. Here's a hot take. Neil Pionk should not be 100% owned in cupful at this point. Marcus just said everyone has him. And like, I get it. Like, you want to give a guy time after like you picked him up. He's been good. There might not be a lot of great D replacement options. However, in his last 13 games, Neil Pionk has hit the score sheet just 3 times with 1 goal, 3 assists for 4 points over his last 13 games. Less than 2 shots a game in that time. A single power play point amongst those 4 points. Yeah. So like if you are a Neil Pionk owner, the days in which he was playing like 22, 24, 25 minutes seem to be behind us for the time being, although he's still averaging like 20, 23 minutes. So maybe that's a bit alarmist. He's still throwing hits. That's nice. He's still getting blocks. That's nice. But the points just aren't coming. Is Neil Pionk still rosterable?
I think he is. I think I would be. And this is coming from someone who has had Vince Dunn and Colton Parayko basically all year. So I feel like Pionk is kind of in that same range where he's not good enough that you want to still be owning him, but he's probably still better than what your free agent options are, unless I guess you're really dedicated to just streaming in players who are going to have 4-game weeks and get you a lot of peripherals to make up for it. I'm not like that kind of player, so I'd rather just have some serviceable D-men who are going to be fine and who I can drop for someone better if they come along. But I think if Pionk were dropped in by a division, I would probably add him, and I don't think I would be dropping him if I had him.
Yeah, so that's an interesting other perspective, right? It's like, well, if Pionk was available, would I add him? Yeah, like I guess it depends on how desperate you are for D. But like he still is on the top power play, although it seems like he's flirting with not being on it anymore. Although the last 3 or 4 games, he certainly hasn't been the guy. Actually, I could extend that to the last like 10, 15. I don't know. He just like he doesn't seem to be the like unquestioned top power play defenseman for some reason, even though like there aren't really a whole lot of other candidates out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think in a couple at least, I'd be shocked if there's really a better option. So I wouldn't be feeling the need to make a move. But if there is, then yes. And in a shallow league, for sure, I don't think you need to own him.
Sorry, I think if you're in a league where 40-point defensemen, top power play guys are all gone, then Neil Pionk needs to be owned. I think if we're going to compare him to Vince Dunn and Colton Parayko, like we need to like admit that he's like his peripherals are good enough to, put him with the Colton Paraykos, and his production so far has been higher than Colton Parayko. He's been like closer to the Vince Dunn where he looks like he can for sure put up 40 points on a Rangers team that's definitely going to have their stops and starts. I'm a little shocked to not hear Jade take this opportunity to say #Neil for Norris, because she's been a huge Neil lover and I've been the Neil hater.
It's a freaky 7-day situation here, Ben.
Yes, this is Freaky Sunday because I think Neil has like a really high really high floor rather. I was really skeptical when the hype began after I think he got 6 power play points over 3 games or something. And he had 3 games in particular where he was just a stud. And I thought that hype was really overblown, but I think I was wrong originally. I think he's very rosterable because of that floor. And as far as points go, I think he's going to produce enough to give you, 4 fantasy points a game roughly in our format, which is, equal to 1 assist and 2 shots. Or I probably shouldn't get too in the weeds about the specific scoring, but I just think he's a very useful player.
Yeah, for sure. Not useless. Lewis, did you have something to pipe in here on Neil Pionk?
I was just gonna say, how high do you think Pionk will go next year if Jade gets her fantasy Rangers lineup with Panarin, Sagan, and Ben all filling up that top 6? What do you think, Jade?
Don't forget Kovalchuk.
Oh yeah, well.
No, not Kovalchuk. Tarasenko.
Oh, well, why not both?
Kovalchuk is old news. He's washed up.
Kovalchuk can be like the Patrick Marleau of the Rangers next year. Kravtsov can go and live with him, but he'll probably be a healthy scratch. Tarasenko will take that wing spot.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention that Erik Karlsson's going to be playing defense, so that's obviously going to hurt Pionk's stock because he'll be the clear power play 2 guy. But, if he has the chance to just pass it to any one of those fantastic players in their top 16, then he should be golden for at least 40. So,
and how good is that power play 2 going to be? That's going to be as good as any other team's power play 1.
That's true. Yeah, in a keeper, add Pionk now.
This is a different brand of fantasy hockey than we generally cover. But I wish all New York Rangers fans their best, dreamiest lineups.
Ben, can you break out the tea leaves to predict the future here? This is real.
Are there tea leaves?
What's that?
Oh my God. I can't believe he just dropped the ball on this in a live show.
We're not going back.
Numerology expert and he doesn't even know how to read.
You already predicted the future. I'm with you on your fantasy Rangers squad.
Okay.
Well, Panarin is number 9 in Columbus and Karlsson is 65. So 6 plus 5 is 11 minus I can't go any further.
Brian Leach, retired number 2 for the Rangers.
Who was
We're
seen
getting
walking
Karlsson
past.
and Panarin.
He was seen walking past Madison Square Garden the other day. Okay.
Exactly.
Marcus, so we've got Myers, Shabbat, Pionk as 3 guys who were drafted at a much better value than they would possibly be drafted if anybody knew what was going to happen. Who are the other? Give me the other 2 big ones, and then we'll run through the honorable mentions.
Okay, so number 4 is Craig Anderson of the Ottawa Senators. In most fantasy formats, I would say he stinks probably. His goals against average is average. His save percentage, his goals against average is extremely low, extremely poor. His save percentage is average. He was drafted in 73% of cupful divisions at an average pick of 214, but he's currently the 4th ranked goalie in the cupful format. Mainly because of the workload he faces every single night and the amount of games that he plays. So he is really, really valuable compared to where he was picked on average. And the last guy is Zach Parise, somewhat of a resurgence this year at his age. Minnesota Wild left winger, drafted in 53% of the cupful divisions at an average pick of 225, and he is currently ranked 52nd overall in Yahoo.
Yeah, Zach Parise is a guy that I have drafted like in the last round of like the last 3 seasons I've played in several of my leagues, and this is the year it paid off. I'm actually surprised I even did it, but I did, and he's doing great. So, and he's doing great because he's finally off the 3rd line, off of like barely being an element on the power play. So he's there, and Craig Anderson is up there because we're talking about cupful stats, and cupful stats reward saves, and nobody has made more saves this year than Craig Anderson, which is incredible because nobody has also let in more goals this year than Craig Anderson. He's given up 104 goals in 31 games. Next is Marc-Andre Fleury with 90 goals against, although that's in 35 games. Carey Price is the closest comparable in games played, and Jake Allen. They've both given up 83 goals in 30 games. So Craig Anderson just hemorrhaging goals. However, he's got a better save percentage than Carey Price and Jake Allen because of all the shots he's facing. He's still mentioned 905 save percentage, which is just below league average, which is like really just incredible given the monumental, gargantuan task of playing goaltender for the Ottawa Senators. We mentioned last week when he got injured that kind of in trouble because the Senators are in trouble because he was concussed, and Elon asked if McKenna or Hogberg were the best replacements, and my answer was neither, and so far that has been the case, although they have had some difficult competition. So we'll see how that continues to play out, but I would be very scared in leagues where goals against hurt you in any way to roster either of the Senators goalies. Marcus, you've got some honorable mentions. This is a really interesting list that you've got here, because these are guys who were drafted like Timo Meier, Shabbat, Pionk, Parise, Craig Anderson, all drafted like really on the late end of their drafts and should have been drafted in the middle to front end for some of them. And these guys that you're about to mention were more drafted in the middle end, but deserve to be in the front end.
Yeah, so the first of the honorable mentions is Mark Stone. I actually picked him up in cupful of free agency, which I was extremely happy with.
What?
He's currently ranked. Yeah.
How?
Early on.
I need to bring up Mark Stone's game log now to try and understand what he could have possibly been doing. I mean, I know
it could have been a different league, but I definitely picked him up for nothing.
Okay, well, like he had 3 points in his first 5 games and has been like over a point per game player since then. So someone really had him on a short leash. He did go pointless in Ottawa's first game of the season, so maybe that was enough.
Yeah, his average draft pick in cupful was 131, and his current rank is 22. So that's
amazing. Mark Stone is amazing.
Yeah, and next guy, the same position, Cam Atkinson. I'm not going to dwell too much on these guys. Dylan Larkin is another honorable mention, and Elias Lindholm was the 4th.
Okay, so we have Stone, Atkinson, Larkin, Lindholm, all guys who are like, will they or won't they? And they all have to an incredible degree. So good on anybody who believed in those guys and got them definitely for lower value than they'll be available for in the rest of in next year's drafts. Okay, quick NHL news and notes. We'll do a little round table here. This is going to be the most Keeping Karlsson-ish part of this show. So anybody who's missing the usual format, soak this in. First, brief NHL news and note. In Colorado, Gabriel Landeskog off the top line. Last week, Elon and I were talking about third wheels in the NHL, and we sort of, I can't remember which one of us mentioned Gabriel Landeskog as the third piece, and we were wondering, how good is he? We believed in him, but he sort of came up on someone who wasn't quite as good as the two guys dominating on the rest of their line. So Landeskog is now off of the top line. Latest word is that Tyson Jost is going to be, or at least was practicing on the top line with McKinnon and Rantanen. So that could be a really great opportunity for anyone to jump on. I think Matt Nieto spent a game on there. And while he was there, I mean, obviously he did not make enough of an impression to get to hold that spot. Let's see. He had one shot. And a -1. So he didn't do very much there. So we'll see if Tyson Jost, who, we essentially on the almanac said he's a work in progress, he's got some pedigree, but he's going to need some deployment and some time. So he's getting the deployment, and we'll see if he's had enough time to really develop. Michael in the chat is adding that the Avalanche also lost, so maybe that's why they're shuffling their lines again. Anybody want to chime in on what they think the Landeskog owners should expect or do with Landeskog should he remain off the top line?
Yeah, I think that they should. I think he'll probably end up back on that top line. I don't see that sticking for too long just because they've been so successful for so long. We've seen Boston toy with breaking up that top line in the past as well, putting Pasternak on a second line to try and spread around the scoring. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, but I think regardless, it's prudent to kind of keep your ear out for sell high options for Landeskog. Not because I think he's going to stick off that top line for so long, but just that he's shooting about 9% above his career average. He's already 3 power play points away from hitting his career high. And he hasn't had a full season since 2015. So I just think a player who's trending towards 90 points at this point of the season is worth, keeping your ear out. What can you get for Gabriel Landeskog? Obviously his percentages are a little high, but you're counting on so many people maintaining high percentages to keep Landeskog producing, whereas McKinnon and Rantanen, they kind of do the work on their own. And then with Landeskog, you're just hoping he can keep getting in on their goals at such a high rate. So if I can get, right now he's on pace for about 93 points, I think. If I can get an 80-point player for Gabriel Landeskog, I'm doing it today.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ben, because Landeskog, if anyone's wondering, well, sell high, how can I sell high in Landeskog? If you own him, hopefully he's on a 93-point pace so far, and that's in large thanks to 24 goals he's scored this year. And like you mentioned, Ben, 20% shooting success rate. So he's probably scored a few more goals than he should have. And if he's bouncing around the lineup, maybe you don't, I feel like if the Avs want to contend, this is what we're seeing. They're maybe we're going to need more than one line. And they might try a couple different iterations. I don't know if they would dare actually break up McKinnon and Rantanen, but Landeskog seems like a guy that they're hoping they can move around the lineup and help other guys score. But if he's not on the top line, he's not in great shape either. In their last game, he was playing with Alexander Kerfoot and JT Compher, who are essentially the next best players to be playing with in Colorado. So it's not surprising that if Colorado has any playoff aspirations, they're going to try and give some more depth to their lineup and not be such a one-line team. But maybe it's not a problem when that one line is just insane. It kind of reminds me, Ottawa in the playoffs, the last time they were in and they got to the conference finals, Game 7 against Pittsburgh, it was the Erik Karlsson show. And the Sens strategy was essentially dominate when Karlsson is on the ice, survive the rest of the time. And I wonder if that might be the more prudent strategy for Colorado rather than, mixing and matching lines. Okay, what else has happened in the NHL this last week? Carey Price is injured. which is not great for anybody who owned him, even though he hasn't been great for you. 904 save percentage, record of 15 wins, 10 losses, and 4 overtime losses. We don't know how long he'll be out for, but it looks like it could be a while. Like the note I'm seeing from, what's the source here? From the Canadians themselves. They hoped he'd get some rest over the winter break. It didn't help. And if anything, it got worse. And then he didn't practice. So in the meantime, we don't know yet if this is day-to-day or week-to-week or a longer thing. Meanwhile, Antti Niemi is going to be the starting goalie for the Montreal Canadiens, which isn't as bad as it would, which doesn't sound as bad today as it would have sounded at the start of the season. Does anybody here have any interest in Antti Niemi as a free agent ad?
I do not. But I think it is worth pointing out that we have a big miss from Elon, his prediction that Niemi would be out of the NHL. He's still hanging around and not playing like the most horrible goalie in the league.
No, I mean, okay. I'll sort of give you that, Lewis. He stopped 26 of 32 shots against Tampa, which is let's just not count games against Tampa.
Yes.
But over the season, 10 games, 870 save percentage. He's started 10 games. Only one of those starts has been a quality start. It was against Buffalo. He stopped 37 of 40 in an overtime loss and put up a 925 save percentage. Outside of that game, he has one other save percentage above 900. It was also at Buffalo. He loves playing Buffalo. Stopped 90.5% of the shots he faced, and then every other one of his 8 appearances has been below 900. So I don't know that Elon is totally out on his projection yet, but I agree that there's little reason to want Antti Niemi.
Yeah, that's worse than I thought. Wrap the segment.
Okay. How about Justin Byfuglien going on surprise IR today? Didn't see this coming, although the note I'm reading is that that he's going to be out for 4 weeks at least. And so this must mean that it's time for Josh Morrissey to consistently strut his stuff on the top power play. And it's unfortunate that he had this little run before Byfuglien's injury because it caught everyone's attention and everyone's like, oh, I got to get this guy on my roster. But it wasn't peak time to own Josh Morrissey. He was doing well, but it hasn't been long enough since then for anyone who jumped on him to drop him. It feels like he's still owned from that run in a lot of leagues. And whoever still owns him just lucked into the top power play quarterback in Winnipeg for the foreseeable future. I mean, I tweeted on Twitter, obviously, I don't tweet, whatever, that we already figured Josh Morrissey was the heir apparent to take the top power play role in Winnipeg soon. But with Byfuglien out, how soon is now? Anyone? Does anyone else think that he is going to be the guy to join? Is there any other competition in Winnipeg for that top power play spot?
I mean, maybe they'll give Tyler Myers a chance, but I don't see why or that would stick. But yeah, Brian, I feel completely the same way, and I actually woke up in a very angry mood this morning thinking about it and double checking to see that Josh Morrissey was in fact still owned in my leagues. And yeah, I remember talking to Ben and Lewis about him a couple of weeks ago saying, I don't really understand where all this Josh Morrissey is coming from when Byfuglien was healthy. He did well when Byfuglien was hurt before. Byfuglien came back, Morrissey went back, and, I didn't see any reason for him to continue doing what he had been doing. And I kind of laughed at these people who were still holding on to him and who bid a lot of fab on him in my couple division. And now they're laughing at me as I am left out of the Josh Morrissey ownership group.
Josh Morrissey is owned in 100% of a couple leagues, so save yourself some time. Don't bother trying to add him if you think he might be free.
Okay, so yeah, Josh Morrissey seems like the guy. The other candidates are Tyler Myers, as you said, Jade. Elon would say it's time for Jacob Trouba to finally strut his stuff, except I think he might have finally realized that Jacob Trouba is not meant to be an offensive defenseman. Maybe he's capable every so often, but he's not. I don't think he has priority over Josh Morrissey for this position. The other name being thrown out there is Sami Niku, and Alex in the chat just mentioned him. He's had an okay season so far. This is his second full pro season in the NHL. If anyone doesn't know who Sami Niku is, he's a native of Finland who was drafted in the 7th round, 198th overall in 2015. But he is a Jets defense prospect with some upside. He's still just 22 years old. In his first North American season, he had 54 points, 16 goals, 38 assists in 76 AHL games with Manitoba. This year hasn't managed to keep that pace up over the first part of the season, where he's had 8 points in 16 games with Manitoba of the AHL. But we'll see. Like, I don't know. Like, I know it's exciting that he could get a look with Buffalo now, but I feel like it's like, especially with Josh Morrissey just recently having produced, that Sami Niku has to be the I don't know, second or third runner-up to step in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Lewis.
Oh, I was gonna say, just to get some Elon in here, would you take Pionk or Morrissey?
Elon, thanks you. That's a really good one. I think I would take Josh Morrissey. Weren't the Rangers, like, the reason Pionk wasn't seeing so much power play time, weren't the Rangers running like 5 forwards for a little bit too? So like, I don't know that Pionk has really added a whole lot. I see, like, if I'm looking at Pionk with 3 points, what was it, in his last 14 games, or was it 11, whatever it was, or 4, it wasn't great. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers still in front of me. Versus the upside of Morrissey playing on that loaded top power play unit in Winnipeg, I'm going Morrissey. Anyone else?
That would be my pick too.
Yeah, same.
Give me Pionk for that season-long upside.
Oh my God, I love this Ben loving Neil Pionk situation. It's amazing.
Ben taking the long view. Marcus, what would you do if you had the choice in your cupful division?
I've streamed both in this year, so I guess it will come down to schedules and how my team is looking for the week. In question. There's not much between them for me. Possibly Morrissey if I had to be pushed.
If Elon was pushing you to make a choice, that's who you would pick. Yeah. And then one other power play 1 spot opening up this week thanks to injury in Ottawa. Thomas Chabot took a hit from Matt Martin. I don't like, they're calling it an upper body injury. We don't have much more specific to go on than that, but he's going to be out, it looks like, at least 3 weeks. And you look at who the possible replacements are on the center. It's like, okay, well, this must mean there's an opportunity for somebody to step in on that top power play unit. Okay, Cody Ceci, Dylan DeMello, Mark Borowiecki, definitely not, although Guy Boucher has done weirder things. And then you've got Ben Hartpour, Stéphane Elliott, Christian Wolanin. Like, what is this decor? Is like Maxime Lajoie. Neither of these guys, I don't know. Do these names jump out at anybody as someone anyone here wants to roster and be like, well, they still get to play with Duchesne and Stone on the top power play. Anyone?
Yeah, I think you keep an eye on them if you're trying to stream people in. I'm not picking any of these guys up for a long-term solution, but you know, if you get that slot and you can score a couple points, that's a great setup for you.
Yeah, I'd be keeping my eye on it as well. Just wait a game or two, see if anyone surfaces, and then they're worth a shot. I agree with Lewis.
Okay, I'm just trying to pull up the last game lines for Ottawa because I
can I vamp while you do that?
Can vamp?
Yeah, just fill some space.
Okay.
I just thought it was really valuable that we should consider a situation where Winnipeg picks up Brendan and Riley, and you can have Morrissey playing with the Smiths. It would be beautiful.
Yes. Wow. It would be, yeah, that's the way it needs to be. If only Peter Chiarelli was GM of Winnipeg, I feel like that could be a possible thing. Although I don't know how he would swing Riley Smith. Didn't he trade? He already has acquired Riley Smith in his career in the Tyler Seguin deal. Yeah. It's not far off.
Double dip.
Okay. Other news and notes. I was bringing up the Ottawa power play line. So last game, Maxime Lajoie and Cody Ceci shared top power play duties as the Sens ran a 3-forward, 2 defenseman setup with Stone, Kachuk, and White on the top line. They also did try a 4-forward setup, and Lajoie was the lone guy on the blue line. Next news note, a couple guys who have returned some injuries. Victor Arvidsson in Nashville. That's fantastic. PK Subban also back in Nashville. Pietrangelo also back, but not in Nashville, in St. Louis, although we talked about him and how his deployment is not bringing him back to the top power play unit. Nashville's last game lines with Arvidsson back in the lineup. Arvidsson played with Rocco Grimaldi and Ryan Johansson for most of the game. So we're really just waiting on Philip Forsberg to get back and stop having random Ryan Hartmans and Rocco Grimaldis on that top line. PK Subban stepped in alongside his defense partner Matthias Ekholm, and also did that at even strength and on the power play. So although it looks like that's still the second power play unit, they just happen to play more time because of line change situations. Let's see. Other news and notes. Elon's so good at these. Mackenzie Blackwood and Colin. Oh God, does anyone know how to say this guy's last name? Delia.
Hey there, Colin Delia.
Hey there, Colin Delia. Both of them just destroying it in their NHL, appearances, emergences. And I guess the question is, how long can either of these guys keep this up? Colin Delia has had a sparkling 3 games if you go back to December 21st. He's played 3 of the last 4 for Chicago, and he has given up only 5 goals on a lot of shots. Chicago is not great at stopping shots. He actually stopped 46 of 48 against Minnesota, and he's got a season 957 save percentage. So way to go for him. Last year, he did see a little action. He saw 100 minutes with an 889 save percentage, which is why, I'm always just a little reticent to get on these guys. And Elon has added both Delia and Blackwood in every pool he's in, just because he's happy to take the plunge and hope it sticks, versus me. And I'm I'd like to see it stick, and then I'll take the plunge, at which point it's too late, but I don't have to sacrifice the guy in the meantime. 2 different philosophies here. But Blackwood, for his part, has put up a 956 save percentage in 5 appearances so far this year, including 4 appearances going back to December 20th, in which he has just been stellar. 947 save percentage. Then he came in for Keith Kincaid, stopped 9 of 9. Then a 952, stopped 40 of 42 against Boston, and then stopped all of 37 at home to Carolina on Saturday. So Mackenzie Blackwood, Colin Delia. Does anybody have a preference between these guys, or both, or neither?
Can I
I'll take Delia.
Oh, sorry, Marcus, you go ahead first.
Can I just put in there and say, over the last 7 days on Yahoo, these are the top 5 or 6, let's say, performing goaltenders in the cupful format. Wait till you hear this for a list of who are they goaltenders. Mackenzie Blackwood, Anton Hudobin, fair enough, Colin Delia or Delia, James Reimer, back up in Florida, Garrett Sparks, Malcolm Subban, Phoenix Copley, Mikhail Neuvert, Aidan Hill, Cal Peterson, Chad Johnson, Jonas Corpusalo. That's where the league is at now. These are the top performing goaltenders in the last 7 days.
That is wild. It really is, and it just shows there are half of those guys we wouldn't have even expected to see an NHL minute this year, and there they are. What were you saying, Average Tom on Ice Crew, about Delia versus Blackwood?
I'll take Delia. I just think that the Hawks, man, I feel silly saying this after the season, the last 2 years, but I just think they have a little bit of a higher upside if they could nail down their goaltending. But I mean, honestly, who knows? You're really just taking the plunge with either one and hoping that somebody sticks it out for longer. You just don't know with goaltenders anymore.
I was going to say I'm all in on Mackenzie Blackwood because in probably my most brilliant move ever, I streamed him in before his game yesterday where he got the shutout, so now he's forever in my heart. But when we're looking ahead, I actually think they're exactly in the same tier for me. I know Ben, somehow, for some reason, loves the Blackhawks. I think they're just as not good as New Jersey. So I would just go with schedule. If they're both available, you know, same tier for me.
All right, and while we're on the subject of goalies, how about we head over to Pittsburgh just for a minute, where Matt Murray is setting the world on fire since coming back from his injury. He's played 5 times, has given up 3 goals in his first game back, then 1 goal in the next game, then none with a shutout, then 2 goals against, then 1 goal against. All of that adds up to 165 saves on 172 shots for a .959 save percentage over 5 games after returning from injury or vacation or whatever he was up to. It worked. He needed whatever recovery he got. Not to doubt that he was actually injured. It's a little like running joke on the show that these players just take vacation when they're not doing well and then come back and do great because they're relaxed. Last week on the show, I was like, let's see if Matt Murray can keep this up. Hold your Casey DeSmiths for now. Peanut Gallery. I shouldn't call you Peanut Gallery. You guys are better than the Peanut Gallery. Group, round table. Anyone here holding Casey DeSmith still? And Marcus, I don't know if you're able to pull it up. Maybe we'll let the ATOI crew chime in first. But if you're able to pull up the couple ownership for Casey DeSmith, I'd be curious to know once they share their thoughts.
I just dropped him in 2 leagues, including Sweden Tier 1, to pick up Robin Lehner. So I am saying bye-bye to DeSmith.
Okay.
I'm allergic to peanuts, so I appreciate you differentiating there. That means a lot to me, Brian.
The soy gallery.
Yeah, thank you. Almonds are okay too. Yeah, I still have DeSmith in a league because I have the roster space, but in the end, I'm cycling through goalies as quickly as I can this year with the way that their results are basically arbitrary.
Okay, so DeSmith, nobody's I'm not feeling him either right now, to be perfectly honest, as long as Matt Murray is great. Of course, there's a chance that Murray's going to falter, and then you pick up DeSmith, but I don't think you need to hold him while Matt Murray's playing so lights out. Marcus, what did you find?
Yeah, he's only available in 1 Cupful division. So
okay, so I'm going to be very interested to track that over the next week or 2, because as we know, Cupful owners are the smartest owners out there, and so we'll see what the 14 remaining Casey DeSmith owners in Cupful decide to do with him over the next week or 2. And that concludes our news and notes. So how about we head to a little bit of a lightning round here, Marcus. You're going to rhyme off some guys. We're going to go top 3 players at each position in the Cupful. Again, if you want to know our scoring scheme in the Cupful, keepingkarlsson.com/KKUPFL, and you'll see the whole scheme laid out for you right there. If anybody does not want to go to that trouble or can't right now while they're listening, just to give you a sense of how the scoring works in the Cupful, of course we prioritize goals the most and then assists. But if you want to know the exact point weightings, I can share those with you. So first up, a goal is worth 4.5 points. Assists are worth 3. A shot on goal is worth 0.5 point. Hits are worth 1/4 point. Blocks are worth 0.5 point. Short-handed points are worth 1 point. And then goalie categories, you get 2 points for a win. So it's not as rewarding as in most leagues, which is why Craig Anderson is doing so well. You get 0.35 points for a save, -2 for a goal against. So essentially, if you stop 6 of 7, you're at roughly 0 for a goalie, and you get a bonus point if your goalie gets a shutout. So knowing that, Marcus, who are the top 3 goalies in the Cupful so far this season?
Number 3, Marc-Andre Fleury, the Vegas Golden Knights, has 179.2 points. Number 2, Frederik Andersen of Toronto, quite a distance ahead of Fleury at 204.85 points, and marginally ahead of Frederik Andersen at number 1. You guys pretty much called it at the start of the season. John Gibson, 208.3 points, 2.61 goals against average, and a .924 save percentage, one of the best in the league.
So Gibson and Anderson are obviously facing a lot of shots against, which is like the big thing, and they're holding really good save percentages and not getting a lot of minuses for goals against. So so good on them. Good on you if you drafted those 2 guys who are way ahead of the pack in goalie points in the Cupful. Marcus, who are the top 3 defensemen in the Cupful so far this year?
Number 3, Brent Burns, 225 points for the San Jose Sharks. No great surprise there. He was drafted generally quite high, and he's solid. He's consistent year in, year out. Ahead of him, not as expected, Thomas Chabot, just 0.25 of a point ahead of him. And number 1, again, not quite as expected, Morgan Riley, a good distance out in the lead at 239.75 points for Toronto.
Okay, so, and somebody making a run lately, thanks to a 4-point night, Erik Karlsson is now on a 9-game point streak. Started off slow. He now has 1 goal and 13 assists for 14 points in his last 9 games. 42 shots in that time, pair of power play points. So he's coming on strong. But this wasn't about him, Marcus. This was about Morgan Riley and Thomas Chabot. Probably not one of the first. Well, Chabot we know wasn't one of the first 10 D-men drafted. Morgan Riley might not have been one of the first 15 defensemen drafted in a lot of these drafts, and he is leading all defensemen in Cupful points. Honorable mention to Mark Giordano and Chris Letang. Chris Letang staying healthy, good for him. Mark Giordano staying young, more or less, with honestly having a banner year. And as we've mentioned on the show, and I feel like I got him about right in the almanac. I don't expect a whole lot of slowdown from Mark Giordano. Okay, next up, best left wingers to date in the Cupful.
Yep, number 3, Calgary, Johnny Gaudreau. Very, very little peripherals for him. It's all just about points and shots. So he has 247 Cupful points. Number 2, you mentioned him earlier in the show. We talked about him a little bit. Gabriel Landeskog, 254.25 points. And way out in front, as always, every year, year in, year out. Possibly on for one of the best years of his career, certainly the best year of the last few years. Alex Ovechkin, I don't know how the guy does it. He drinks Dr. Pepper on the bench. He parties all summer and lies in fountains after winning the cup. And he's 35 points ahead of the next closest left wing. He's just unbelievable.
You know, Marcus, I'm glad you made that point, because I feel like if he struggled this year, it would have been can you imagine how awful the reaction towards Ovechkin would have been? Oh, this guy spent his summer partying. Some people we cut a little slack for a Stanley Cup hangover, but this is a Stanley Cup hangover. So I'm actually relieved to some extent that he is still performing, so nobody can give such a lazy, half-butted take. There you go, Elon, that's for you. About Alex Ovechkin's year and partying.
Jade actually made some good points about him in her blog today. And a couple of funny videos of him from during the summer. I don't know how he is still going. It's like the more he does to his body, the better he gets. He's unbelievable. Yeah,
if you want to relive Alex Ovechkin's summer, and why wouldn't you? Jade over at the Average Time on Ice blog has done a fantastic job of compiling the best moments that are up there. Oh, Jade was pointing, but just yeah, I thought she wanted to say something. Okay.
Oh, no, I was just waving.
Okay, great. Next up, top 3 right wings in the Cupful. Marcus, who do we have?
Number 3, Patrick Kane. Again, another steady guy. He's been there for years. Not a whole lot to say about him. Number 2, a little bit of surprise and one of the best players in the league this year for sure. Led the league for points for quite a while now. Mikko Rantanen, Colorado Avalanche. Himself, Landeskog, and McKinnon for most of the season have been incredible together. He had no points in his first season in the NHL, had a 42-point season the following year, then an 85-point pace, and now he's on for, I think, 120-something. He just throws an extra 40 points on every year. It's crazy. He's really, really, really impressive this year. But the number 1, and a guy who was on fire in the second quarter of the season, Nikita Kucherov of Tampa Bay Lightning, had a slow start by his recent standards, but really turned things on. He's averaging over 2 points a game over his last 19 games, on pace for 132 points, and potentially a scoring title.
Okay.
A points title.
Yeah, and maybe Rantanen's a surprise there. David Pastrnak just outside the top 3, and those 4 are way ahead of the pack. The next highest player is Mitch Marner, who's about 20 points back of Pastrnak, which is more than the difference between Pastrnak in 4th place and Kucherov in 1st place. So Mitch Marner doing great, but still not quite with the front of the pack here. Okay, top 3 centers in the cupful so far?
Yeah, all 3 young, exciting new centres. Number 3 is Connor McDavid. He obviously on a fairly struggling Oilers team hasn't really fulfilled his massive potential, but he's still carrying the team. He's narrowly missed out on the overall top 5. He's number 3 in the centres. Number 2, another young upstart, Jack Eichel, the Buffalo Sabres. And at number 1, Nathan McKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche. We mentioned that line, that incredible line in Colorado with himself, Landeskog and Rantanen. They've just set the world on fire so far. So he's our number 1.
So how about that? Like, there's Colorado Avalanche have the second best left winger in our format, the second best right winger, and the best center, which just shows like how dominant that line is. I know any week there's one guy in Sweden who owns 2/3 of that line. I can't remember which 2/3 it is, but like I feel hopeless when I'm up against him. Like there's nothing I can do about it. And then I just played someone with the other, like who owns the third piece of that line. And I think I also lost because of their production. So you never want to be going up against anybody relying on like who can count on these Avalanche players. So I'm just going to do a quick summary. Overall, all positions, because we get a lot of questions about do I want centermen, left wingers, right wingers? This list won't really help you answer, but Marcus helpfully compiled our top 5 overall cupful scorers so far this year. If you own these guys, you're feeling really good about it. Marcus, do you want to lay them out for us?
Yeah, number 5, Jack Eichel of the Buffalo Sabres, having a great year so far. Number 4, Mikko Rantanen, the aforementioned Mikko Rantanen, right winger, Colorado Avalanche. Number 3, Nikita Kucherov, another right winger with Tampa Bay. Number 2, Alex Ovechkin, pacing for his first 100-point season in 9-10 years, I think. Same goal pace as his first season, where he scored 65 goals. And number 1, he was the leading center in the last category. So it's Nathan McKinnon, leading the league in shots as well as everything else. And he's on pace for 122 points. He's quite a distance ahead of the second-ranked Alex Ovechkin.
Wow, Nathan McKinnon just like running away with the cupful scoring title so far. Okay, we're running a little over time. Marcus and Average Time on Ice Crew, are you guys all still good to hang around for another like 10 minutes? Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs up. Great. Okay. Quickly, Marcus, you compiled some of the top peripheral performers in the cupful so far. So these are guys, like, even if you're not in the cupful, if your league counts hits, blocks, shots, you know, I'm going to say 2 of these 4 might be available and helpful to you because the other 2 are likely not going to be. Marcus, you want to start with the 2 that likely aren't, like, are already spoken for?
Yeah, so the guys who are probably gone, I'm guessing you're thinking Rasmus Ristolainen and Alexander Edler.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're both 100% owned in fantasy in cupful. Ristolainen, 32% of his fantasy points have come from his hits and blocks this year. He's on a 53-point pace. He's a must-own in pretty much every format of fantasy hockey. Edler, he's so reliable when he's not injured. Unfortunately, he does get injured quite a lot. I named my cupful team after him. He's one of my favorite fantasy guys. He's just so reliable. He was drafted in and is owned in 100% of cupful divisions, and leads the league in blocks at 3.1 blocks per game. And he's playing at a 50-point pace, which is nice to have.
Yeah, that was a really good call, like by Elon at the start of the season, saying that, hey, the Vancouver power play this year could be dangerous, and Alex Edler will be the guy. He's already not been healthy the whole season, but hopefully it's just happy days ahead for him and the top unit in Vancouver, where he can put up points alongside his peripherals. So, Marcus, who are the 2 guys contributing peripherals who might still be available?
Yeah, 2 guys who aren't fully owned in cupful. Number 1, William, is it Carrier or Carrier? He's a left wing, right wing for Vegas Golden Knights playing at the moment. He leads the league by quite a distance in hits per game, so you can rely on him to be getting 5 hits a game, which is quite valuable in itself. He's also throwing in a few goals. He's 8 goals, which is his career high. What's looking like his first full NHL season. He's as reliable for hits as sunrise and sunset. He's really, really valuable in that category. The other guy then, Brandon Tanev of the Winnipeg Jets, again, left wing, right wing eligibility. He's only on a 28-point pace, but he's averaging 1.5 shots per game, 2 hits per game, a block per game. He's a good streamer. I've had him a couple of times in a couple of leagues if the Winnipeg schedule suits, so he's one to keep an eye on.
Okay. How has Vegas played 42 games? But like, weren't we just talking about another team that played like 35? Anyway, I shouldn't ask these questions if I don't have the answers readily handy. That's my missing Elon challenge to avoid. So yeah, William Carey, great guy, like 207 hits in 42 games. If hits is a category for you, he might be able to turn that category for you week in, week out. And Brandon Tanev seems to be a guy who is like capable of putting up a random point in addition to those hits. Marcas, you mentioned 28-point pace, has been a good stream, especially in leagues that count peripherals like the Cupful, because like he'll offer you a solid baseline of like 2 points in a game thanks to his peripherals, like 2 fantasy points. And then maybe on top of that, he'll throw you, he'll throw in a point every so often. All right, we've got, what do we have left? Okay, Marcus, let's jump to the best players available in the Cupful who are less than 50% owned. So again, the Cupful, a brilliant league full of brilliant managers, and these guys are still available, which means in your league, especially a deep one, they might be available in yours. Marcus, name me. Well, first, I'm gonna blow up your spot on one of them. Laurent Brossoit is one of them, right? He's been amazing in every start he's gotten, averaging in our format. Like just because he's not giving up a ton of goals when he starts, he's likely to get the 2 bonus points for a win. But he's not someone you should own, right? Like he's more of a stream.
Yeah, so if Winnipeg have a back-to-back and you're desperate for points, he seems like a good guy to go to. He's won 8 out of his 10 games when backing up Connor Hellebuck this year, averages 8.74 fantasy points per game, which he's basically the best backup of all the backups in the league, where the guy is the clear backup. Okay, so yeah, so Laurent Brossoit, kind of like the Philip Grubauer of this year, if I dare say, except probably less chance of stealing the job. How about you give me another guy, Marcus, who is mostly unowned in the Cupful? Yeah, Anton Strawman, who was out injured for a month for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's owned in just one Cupful division. He's averaging 3.6 fantasy points per game, which is roughly, well, it's actually higher than the likes of Gustas Bear, Falk, Hamilton, Jake Muzzin, Rasmus Dahlin, who are all 100% owned. He missed 5 weeks. He returned in mid-December. He's a goal and 3 assists in his 6 games since returning, and he's averaging over 2 shots a game. He seems like a solid ad. He won't show up in the overall rankings, but because he missed those weeks, but he's a reliable D-man. Okay, so yeah, great. Like, it's hard to find a defenseman who's like, I know 3.6 fantasy points per game is not peanuts in my Cupful division. So a great guy to look at, thanks to occasional points and some peripherals. Like you mentioned, more than 2 shots per game. That's helpful. How about give us 3 forwards, Marcus, who are less than 50% owned and might be available in a lot of people's leagues. Yeah, number 1, Alexander Steen of the St. Louis Blues. He's only owned in 19% of the Cupful divisions, averages 3.7 fantasy points per game, 15 points in 28 games for a 44-point pace, and he's averaging over a hit and a block per game, just under 2 shots per game. Not setting the world alight by any means, but he's probably a fringe player, maybe a streamer, depending on how your lineup looks. Next guy was Frank Vetrano, who has the triple eligibility of center, right wing, and left wing, which is always valuable. He plays for the Florida Panthers. He's owned in 38% of Cupful divisions. He averages 2.36 shots per game. He has hits and blocks to boot. Only 15 points in 36 games, so 34-point pace. But his peripherals do pretty much make up for that. The last guy then is Carl Soderberg. He's only owned in a quarter of the Cupful divisions. He was undrafted in every division, and he's currently ranked 142nd, which is quite a decent ranking. He is a centre. There is an abundance of talent at centre. He's on a 46-point pace. He's 2 shots per game, and he has 1 hit and 3/4 of a block per game. 3.72 fantasy points per game. So he's not shy of the numbers of, say, Nazem Kadri, who's 100% owned in Cupful. And Colorado have the added benefit of playing mostly on off days. So he's a nice third center to have. And I think that's a really valuable aspect to look at.
Good point. I love, by the way, that for Frank Vitrano, you mentioned that he plays for Florida. Because like, isn't he on Boston still? Or like, where did he land? He landed in Florida, and he's landed with some very good line mates lately. Who are they? He's playing most of the time over the last like 5 games or so with some mixture of Hoffman, Dadonov, and Henrik Borgstrom. Which is much better company than what he was keeping at the start of the year when he was playing like on the 3rd or maybe even 4th line. Probably 3rd line with Jared McCann and Dennis Malgin. So keep an eye on him. He also, before this spell, had some time with Trocheck and Huberdeau. He's kind of like it kind of seemed like a Nick Bjugstad type, where like we know he's not going to do a whole lot himself, but when he does get deployment, he's capable of throwing some pucks on net and has some good players with him that maybe he can use to help pick up a point. Okay, we are winding towards the end of this show. Marcus, you just compiled a little bit of Cupful trivia and trends about like the Cupful. So this is very league specific to the Cupful, but I think it paints a good picture of what our league is like. Do you want to like cherry pick 1 or 2 of these little pieces of trivia and share them with the group before we sign off?
Yeah, one thing that was kind of being discussed a lot in the Cupful Facebook group was whether or not the scoring for goalies made it kind of more beneficial to drop your goalies and just go with extra skaters. So I had a look at that today, and it kind of looks like not really. You're better off having your 2 goalies. It doesn't benefit you to drop them and go with extra skaters. The goalie scoring is tough on people who are used to counting wins quite heavily, but the saves in the Cupful division are more valuable, overall more valuable than wins. So yeah, I think saves are actually the 4th most valuable category. So the way it works is assists have worked out the most valuable based on the total number of fantasy points scored. Assists followed by shots on goal, then goals, then saves, blocks, hits, wins, shorthanded points, shutouts, and then obviously goals against count against you, so they're the least valuable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more? Do you have one more for us?
Yeah, sorry. There's one player. Here's a little stat to go out on. There's one player drafted in every division who is now not owned in a single division. James Neal.
Oh, that stinks.
100% drafted, 0% owned.
What's the opposite of real deal, James Neal?
I don't know.
Come on, average time on ice. This is your.
They're the funny guys.
Yeah.
Get out of here, James Neal.
Too much at once.
Okay, we just have people shouting at James Neal now, which I think is the rough equivalent of the opposite of real deal, James Neal. Marcus, this has been so much fun. We have some extra little trivia pieces that we'll share on the Cupful Zone Facebook group with all our Cupful participants. If you're wondering more, if you want to know more about the show, you can be a part of the Cupful. You can still join a wait list to take over a team from somebody who has had to let go of their team for one reason or another. So you can do that by becoming a patron of Keeping Karlsson. Not only by becoming a patron of Keeping Karlsson can you join the wait list, but you can also get access to the Patrons Only Facebook group, get an extra bonus episode once a month. You get access to every show's notes where we essentially have a script for what we talk about. So if you're like, oh, what'd you say about this player? You can just like Command F or Control F it. That sounded worse than I meant it to. 2 episodes in a row. But you can find the player that we talked about, find what we had to say, skip to the parts that you really want to know about. Of course, you'll miss the lovely sounds of Elon and I's voices, but you get extra time with our voices during the patron cast. You can also become a patron just because you like the show, just because you want to support us anyway. It helps keep future episodes coming. So if this interests you, you can go to keepingkarlsson.com/patron. You can also leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, which is really very much appreciated. And as appreciated are the appearances of you, Marcus. Let's start with you. I just want to give you a big thanks for all this work you did and all that you've been doing to compile and make the Cupful not just a league people play in, but like a league that has like news to read about. It's like everything I could ever dream of in a fantasy league where I have. It's almost like you're the beat writer for the Cupful. So thank you for all the work you do. Do you have a Twitter handle? Like, do you want to try and get do you want to share your Twitter handle or anything? Or
yeah, it was in the tweet that Keeping Karlsson put out tonight. If anybody wants to click on it, I won't try and spell it out. Yeah, no, thanks to you guys. It's a really, really enjoyable league to be in. I'm hoping to be in it for many years to come. It's my first year in it, and I'm leading my division. So obviously, all the work that I'm putting in to my beat writing has repaid itself. So
that's great. I'm glad you got a little humble brag in there. You deserve it. Pat yourself on the back. Leading a Cupful division is not an easy thing to do, which is what makes it all the more rewarding. Average Time on Ice crew, Ben, Lewis, Jade, thank you so much for being here. Ben, you have anything to say before we say so long?
Henrik Lundqvist is the champ. Philly Heat is next in line. Let's get it. Go Rangers 2020.
Beautiful. Jade, you want to follow that up with anything?
I mean, Ben said it so well. Thank you, Brian, for having us on the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. Follow us on Twitter at AVG Time on Ice and check out our blog, averagetimeonice.wordpress.com. And talk to us on Twitter. We're fun. We like to chat.
Yeah, a great Twitter follow. Lots of like funny daily content. It's probably what you want the Keeping Karlsson account to be, is what the Average Time on Ice account is. Lewis lost his sound, but I'm going to count him in. Oh, no, he's going. He would say goodbye. I was going to get his fantasy Jeopardy. Jeopardy is having like a fantasy league contest where you pick a captain and then 2 players for the upcoming, I think it's like for the tournament for the All-Star games coming up in February. Lewis, you're gone. You left me hanging.
He's too shook to fight you, Brian.
Let's get Matilda on here for the third of Average Time on Ice. Here she is. She's getting over all of Lewis's duties.
Man, Lewis, we were so close. Okay, he was going to say something about Buzzy, which I'm sure will resonate with a large percentage of our listeners. Lewis, can you hear me? No. Okay. Sorry, everybody. You'll have to follow the Average Time on Ice Twitter account if you want to get Lewis's Fantasy Jeopardy picks. I'll probably share mine out at some point. How can you not go Ken Jennings as your captain, right? And then the player I know I want on my team is Alan Lynn, who I don't know if Jeopardy watchers will remember, but he like the whole time he was like on such a great run and he was in the Tournament of Champions, but every time he played, he was like angling for a job as a clue writer on Jeopardy, and I found that really endearing. And then maybe the other person I would go for is Ken Mueller, the college championship winner. That would be my Jeopardy fantasy team. Anyway, I'm sure everyone is really pumped about that segment, including Elon. All right. That's it. We're closing out the show. We're going to hit that outro music, and I'm going to go ahead and read you the credits. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was supported by our patrons, including our newest ones, Simon N., John, Mike M., Jacob L., and honestly, everybody who is a patron, especially, and anyone who listens to the show has given us a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you so much for supporting the show and being here with us and for us. Elon and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We wish you all a happy new year, and we hope that everybody has another year full of fantasy championships in their future and that we can help you along with that. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dauber Prospects, Corsica, Natural Stat Trick, Charting Hockey, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Yahoo. Great job, everybody. Great job, Average Time on Ice crew. Once again, thank you to Marcus and Ben and Jade and Lewis. You guys crushed it. You can tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson if you have any feedback on the show, any questions, anytime. And I think that'll do it. So until next time, when Elon returns, we invite you to all, please, and why would you think of doing anything but keeping on keeping Karlsson? Now's when Elon would express concern during Karlsson's cold snaps. But there's no reason to, because he's great. Lewis, did you make it back in time to not share your Jeopardy picks?
I am back in time to not share Jeopardy picks.
Bummer.
I would have picked Buzzy. I feel like all the really great Jeopardy champs are super obnoxious.
Oh my goodness. Jesus.
Can we edit that into the episode?
Was that your impression of Buzzy, Lewis? Was that super obnoxious? Just like Lewis has a point. Oh no, Lewis.
I just wanted to say, I got a kid in here. I can't do it.
Okay.
The average time on Ice podcast is going to be lit.
Yeah. Jade is proud of herself for not having the worst audio quality. You should be.
Yeah, I was really self-conscious about it the whole time because Brian kept telling me that I had terrible quality, which I'm sure I do. Sounds really weird to hear my voice through the headphones.
No, you fixed it though. It got better. So thank you for that.
It was all Matilda.
And Michael in the chat shares the great news that Nick Schmaltz has scored. Thank God. I was actually really...
Assist?
Huh?
Did Keller get an assist?
Oh, I don't know yet. Michael in the chat with the 60-second delay, let us know. I'm really relieved because I was in a matchup, and I swear the scoreboard showed that I was down by 10 points, and my opponent had like 4 players playing in the Arizona-Vegas game, and I had none. And I was like, okay, week's over. So I added Colin Delia, and this isn't Cacuffle, this is another league, although it was a similar situation. So I did Colin Delia for next week, and then I checked the scoreboard again, and I'm up 11. In the same situation, like nothing, I don't know why the score didn't display correctly, but I used my last ad of the week on a goalie for next week in a matchup that I could very well lose on tonight's games. But Marc-Andre Fleury giving up a goal helps me a lot.
If you win, Brian, that's going to be such a great power move, though.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't even worried.
It's also, so it's a game I took over, or it's a team I took over, like for a friend of mine. Like I joined him to help manage the team. He was like 0-6. And we're playing against this week a team that leads the league. They're 11-1. So to like turn the page on a matchup that's close enough to lose and be like, nah, I've got this against a team that's lost once all season would be a really, really bad ass move.
I have some very exciting breaking NHL news to report. My terrible, unlucky team that I've been tilting about all season long because against all odds, we cannot win ever, is going to finally get a win this week thanks to Alex Tuck's assist tonight.
Alex Tuck. Honestly, Marcus, I feel like he's got to be one of the fantasy ads of the year, like someone who wasn't drafted in most leagues but is now owned in so many of them.
Yeah, he's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So thanks. This is definitely like bonus footage for anybody who happens to watch our show on YouTube, which there are people who do. So I hope they all enjoyed it. And I'm seeing some really good video from Lewis. Lewis, does the little one have any hot takes to share? No. Get an exhausted wave away. No thanks. Okay. Bye everybody. Thank you for being here. It was a lot of fun. Hope to see you again next week. So long, live YouTube crew.
Thank you.